To call to order the Tuesday, December 10th meeting of the Carlisle Selectboard. We're going to just quickly review the agenda, have community input, then we're going to have a conversation with Representative Simon Cataldo, who's here. Then we'll have a joint meeting with the Finance Committee to discuss the fiscal year 2026 budget presentation. At 8:15, we're planning to have a discussion on the Council on Aging Human Services, just a discussion of what our last meeting when we discussed their community center. We'll have appointments at 8:45 where we're going to, the employee appointment of Ashley Cody, the town clerk, and then we'll have an annual town meeting discussion at 8:55. And that'll include the town administrator bylaw discussion, as well as at 9:20 we'll have the American Rescue Plan, ARPA funding status. 9:30 we'll review the fire station designer selection RFQ. We'll have town administrator report, warrants and minutes, and then liaison reports. And again, at the end, we'll have additional community input. But first, I'd like to call to order the select board meeting and take a roll call vote. I don't know.
He's not on.
He's not on?
Attendance?
Yeah. Since there's no online, we have 4 members in attendance: Kate Reed, Barney Arnold, Travis Snell, and Scott Triola. David Modell is out. So I'll start with community input. We typically limit community input to 1 to 2 minutes, and you can come forward and address comments, but please introduce yourself first and your street address. I know there's one person here who's interested in speaking, and if there's a second, we'll move to that and we'll go online. You want to come forward and please introduce yourself? Yep,
Yeah,
that'd be great.
I'm Stuart Johnstone. I'm from Concord, actually, 91 Pine Street, Concord. But I operate the cross-country ski concession at Great Brook Farm State Park. And we have a parking crisis, a new situation with the redesign of the parking lot at 1018 Lowell Street has created about half the capacity that it used to have. And this is an area we used to park about 200 cars. It's now 105 cars. Wow. Those spots might get recycled 3 or 4 times on a busy day. So this is a sizable amount of people coming that won't be able to park now. Basically, I want to ask the board a question. Would it be possible to have the ski concession utilize marked parking spots along Church Street at Spalding Field and the parking lot at Banta Davis Field for skier parking? And if so, I would investigate shuttle service options. We do have, winters of all kinds. 3 winters ago, we had a day when over 2,000 people showed up and skied. So the loss of 400 spots is going to hurt on some days. It won't be very much, but this would be occasional days during the winter months. So that's my question to the board.
Great. Are there any quick questions relative to this? I think what we'll do is ask that, I'll communicate with you and get a plan together, and maybe we can have you come back and we'll review it at our next meeting.
Okay.
Right.
On that.
Because this is not on our agenda as part of
Right.
public input, we cannot discuss this tonight. But
Yeah,
the chairman has indicated that we'll.
I'll follow up with you
Great.
directly then.
Follow
Thank
up.
you
Thank
for
you.
coming. All right, appreciate it. Mr. Harrison,
Paving project.
you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening. Russell Ruthin, Pine Brook Road.
I'm sorry.
On behalf of more than 30 Carlisle residents who signed the petition for the Carlisle Street Dedication Program so far, I would like the Select Board to consider the new policy, and I would like to provide a very brief summary of the program. The names of streets in Carlisle were generally chosen decades ago, but some of those names no longer reflect the values of the people who live here now. Fortunately, many municipalities have come up with a simple and inexpensive solution: street dedication programs. Are there people, places, or things of cultural significance that deserve recognition in our daily lives? Should one of the roads intersecting South Street have the honorary name of Adams Lane, since James and Priscilla Adams, the first English settlers to Carlisle, lived there in 1662? Should one of the streets crossing Indian Hill Road have an honorary name that shows respect for the region's indigenous people. Should one of the streets in town be named Toby Road in honor of the enslaved Carlisle resident who reportedly died in the famous Battle of April 19th of 1775. Street dedication programs have 5 common features across the country. First, honorary street signs are not replacements, but rather temporary additions, typically for terms of 20 years. Second, the honorary street signs are distinguished by shape, color, and position from the official signs so that emergency services are not misled. Third, if 2/3 of the owners residing on a street can agree on a name, they would submit an application that would be approved by the Select Board unless the name was found to lack cultural significance to Carlisle or was obscene, indecent, or profane. Fourth, donations of residents on the street generally cover the costs of the sign and installation, about $100 to $300. And fifth, honorary names are not permitted on arterial roads, a street which goes through the town center or crosses town borders or affords a primary means of access from an arterial street to at least 2 other streets. The residents of Pinebrook Road would like to be one of the first applicants to the street dedication program with a proposed honorary name of Mikinak Road. The Algonquin word Mikinak means turtle, and turtles are important animals in indigenous cultures, and Pinebrook Road is close to Turtle Rock, a recognized indigenous site in Great Brook Farm. We hope the town of Carlisle might see what other municipalities already understand, that street name dedication is an inclusive and democratic process for honoring the past. I hope the Select Board will consider scheduling a full presentation and discussion at a future meeting. Thank you for listening.
Okay.
If you would give that to Ryan, that will be included in our minutes verbatim.
Good volume, thank you.
Yes.
Great. Are there any people online? Are there any public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'd ask Representative Cataldo to please come forward. Welcome to Carlisle. Pleased to have you here.
So glad to be here, and to the members of the Select Board, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a delight. I think a lot has happened since the last time that I've come before you, and I remember being so excited to appear. It was the first time I was getting to appear before any municipal board as a member of the House of Representatives, and in the past 2 years, I've just loved representing Carlisle. I love how engaged the residents are. I love how they reach out to me. I love how many of them come to office hours, and I want to thank the town staff for hosting my office hours every 6 weeks or so in this building, sometimes in this room. And I just want to encourage members of the Carlisle community to continue to reach out to me. I had a few prefatory things that I wanted to kick us off with, and I know you have a lot of topic areas that you want to discuss and questions, and I'm eager to get into those as well. So first of all, I think that I've learned a little bit about how these meetings can be effective since being elected and having sat or stood before many select boards and school committees and other municipal bodies in Acton and Carlisle and Concord and Chelmsford, the towns that I represent. And I know you all know what you're doing here, and I think that our meetings and conversations have been very productive. But I just want to say, first of all, that I understand that you're in an impossible situation right now. The confluence of inflation and Prop 2.5 and some other conditions have made the management of municipal government impossible. And I know that the state is not filling the gap. So I just want to get that out on the table, that I understand that. And you should consider me and, of course, Senator Barrett to be your advocates. Another important advocate that you have is the Mass Municipal Association. And so I know that Ryan is excellent at communicating with that group. But when I think about how Carlisle's voice can be heard. I think it's really important to make sure that it is heard with the MMA too, because I've learned that each budget cycle, the MMA comes out with its priorities, and those really are the municipal priorities by and large. I, as one of 160 members of the House and one of 200 members of the legislature, will do all I can to advocate for this community. But that entity and probably other similar entities can help elevate those needs. So if you can get what you want embedded in those priorities, that makes it doubly effective. You have more than one or two voices on that stage. I want to give an example for you and for the public, for you as a reminder, for the public, perhaps not as a reminder of how this can work really well. So last time I came in here at the beginning of my term, you told me about how the economies of scale, I think I probably told you about all these different grant programs, and you said, look, the economies of scale does not work for Carlisle. We don't have like all these back office busybodies who are able to write grant applications and do the research to find out. And so one of the priorities actually this session, and I give Governor Healy a lot of credit for this, was basically a federal funds bill. By coincidence, I actually sat on the federal funds committee in the House. It was a House-only committee, and we held the hearing on this bill. Carlisle was recognized by the Secretary, Ann Goby, who testified on this bill specifically about the need for communities like Carlisle to have some more support from the state in accessing, in particular, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, monies that are going to be flowing, hopefully flowing, to many states, and of course, among them, Massachusetts. And so we passed that through. We've had some communications about making sure that Carlisle can get connected to what I think are going to be considerable services in order to access matching funds and other funds. Basically, what that bill does is it taps the state's rainy day fund, which right now is in very healthy fiscal condition, to spend some money to access those federal funds. And Carlisle is exactly the type of community that is geared towards. So excited to see what I can do to facilitate that. But just as an example of how I think this process can work really well. Also want to thank the town and Ryan and I meet every year before I go in for my request for the budget. I just want the public to know that, and for you, of course, to know that he's a very effective advocate on that, and we will continue to do that as we enter the next budget cycle. I think that's all I have, and again, very happy to answer your questions.
Great, thank you. So we had put together a list of questions. Actually, each of the members submitted different things. I'm just going to go through them.
Sure.
Because they submitted them. So the first was special education costs continue to increase at an unsustainable rate due to increases in out-of-district tuition costs, transportation costs, number of students on the IEPs, et cetera. Are there discussions or initiatives at the state level to further assist Massachusetts towns in managing or mitigating special education costs?
Yes. This is a major problem. It's a major problem in every municipality I represent. There's a strong coalition of legislators that think that this is a major problem. One of the main drivers of this issue is, on top of the inflation that we're seeing and cost increases that we're seeing across the board, the costs of these out-of-district schools are rising by crazy amounts. Now, they may not be crazy on the merits. They may be totally justified on the merits, but in relation to the increases in public school costs, they're going way, way up. And the reimbursement is not keeping track with that. So there are a couple of bills, both of which I've co-sponsored, both of which I think are strong, and both of which I expect to be refiled this session. They're both supported by and priorities of the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. H525 was this session. It'll probably have a different bill number next session in January when it's refiled by Representative Kuchmarek of Fitchburg. And that's to increase the special education circuit breaker reimbursement rate from 75% to 90%. And then there's another one, H527, to adjust the approved cost thresholds. So neither of those made it through. They were both sent to study, but voices were heard, and I hope that we're gonna see movement either in the passage of legislation, the legislation that's embodied in those statutes substantively, or perhaps more likely through the state budget process. There's also another bill, and I don't have the number here, so I'm going off of memory, but it's to create a commission to study this issue, which sounds like a silly thing, but ultimately we have to do that because the scheme is not working right now. And I think we need to do something to rein in the costs of the out-of-district schools, the private schools. They're just charging an amount that, while it may be fair on the merits, is way too much relative to everything else. It doesn't go directly to your question, but the Chapter 70 increase is something I've been very vocal about, especially for hold harmless communities. We did see, although you're going to kind of like laugh at it, there was a historic increase in Chapter 70, including for minimum aid communities. We went up from $60 to $100 per student. I expect, we're going to continue to advocate. When I say we, the coalition of legislators who cares about that issue, are going to continue to advocate for that. We did see an increase in regional school transportation of 2.5% over last year. So this is a priority. Special education reimbursement is a priority for me, and I know that it's putting a lot of strain on our school districts and towns. Yes.
Simon, since you're a co-sponsor of a bill, I mean, it's certainly true that the out-of-district providers are increasing their tuitions at a greater rate than the general ed. So clearly an issue. But what's driving out-of-district is a lack of resources in the regular ed schools to provide that service for those children. And in particular, from personal experience, there's a lack of creativity, in my opinion, on how to say group, like Concord Carlisle, at the K through 8. We can't match kids and put them together to get critical mass to actually provide it in district. Most of those parents would prefer that their children stayed in district. So I would urge you, as you're considering that issue, to think about the flip side, which is the most effective way to reduce out of district is to provide the right things in district. And if a district can't do it itself, there should be mechanisms. And we're so balkanized in our 351 town system that those kind of obvious solutions are just not being pursued, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I think that's part of the reason we have to study these issues. I will say that in Concord, we have seen a very significant reduction in out-of-district placements, and I think it's been as a result of concerted efforts. I think there are probably some solutions at our disposal that the state can be a better partner on.
All right, so on number 2, the cost of municipal building maintenance project has increased substantially over the past several years and has outpaced broader inflation. Are there any discussions, initiatives at the state and local, state level to change mass procurement law to address these costs and increase and allow for a more competitive bidding process? I just add to that, I mean, this is something we're really dealing with front and center. I mean, we manage a budget and we're working, within our town to do our best, but there are these capital costs that just keep going up and we can't seem to get ahead with, we're talking about, we're right now funding a police station, and you'll see some of this if you can stick around a little bit on the budget presentation, but, we're talking about funding a fire station which needs renovation for all very justified, what I think are justified reasons. But we need some help, and I think that, if there are ways that the state can help, that'd be helpful to everyone. So I don't know, just adding some context.
Yeah, this is a great example of why it's really good for us to have this meeting now. One thing that I'd ask you, not to give you more homework, but there is this Municipal Empowerment Act that the governor has filed. It has many different provisions. Some of them deal with procurement. For example, it would raise the threshold for competitive bids and remove some publishing requirements. It would clarify that Chapter 30B enables groups of cities and towns to award multiple contracts through the request for proposals process and purchase supplies and services from collectively bid contracts, and that's something that, if not directly, we have kind of indirectly touched on in some prior conversations. There is also separately from that, H 3127, which is a procurement parity bill for Chapter 30B. It would do a number of things, including increasing the procurement cap for municipal purchases under Chapter 30B from $50,000 to $100,000. So if there are any particular items within those proposals that you think would be more beneficial to Carlisle, more relevant to Carlisle than others, I'd love to have that input. You know, the Municipal Empowerment Act did not make it through, despite, you know, significant political capital applied by the governor this time. I think there are probably some provisions in that bill that are going to be harder to enact than others. And what I'd love to know from Carlisle is, you know, what are the things that are the most important, and then I can, you know, apply pressure the best way I know how.
We were still interested in the advocacy for the MSBA equivalent for municipal buildings. So where do you think that stands?
So there are a couple of proposals out there. There is a bill 3802, House 3802, that made it all, it was reported favorably from committee, and it's before House Ways and Means now. So it's made it almost like as far as it can go before coming to the floor. Now I've learned there are a lot of bills with House Ways and Means now, but that is a good sign. And I've heard that from before the time I was elected, that this is a really good idea. It's something that our communities need. It's not just Carlisle, by the way.
Yeah.
In my district, Chelmsford's a really big advocate for that as well. So I will do what I can, and this is on my list. But I think that's a good example of, like, as you're interacting with the MMA, make sure that that's on its list as well of priorities. Usually they've got an organization like that has like three to four. And I think that's a good one and worthy.
Representative, I know you've heard this from me before, but this one is particularly important to Carlisle. So the small towns, the towns that don't have the ability to spread taxes over a commercial base or a big tax base, a $21 million building is not a lot of money for a building anymore. But in a town like this, where the average tax bill would go up $800 a home in order to fund that $20 million in projects, you can't get that through. So if you had the choice between funding special education and making sure students get education and funding the building, you're always going to pick the education in a small town, because you can't do both. You can't increase taxes that high on both. So the biggest impact I think the state can make in terms of tax impact in small towns is helping with infrastructure.
Yeah.
If you can take the infrastructure that's looming over us out of the picture, then you can fund the regular operating increases, and even the ups and downs of education can be handled. But you can't tack on the buildings, and you can't tack on the road deferred maintenance and then still ask people to continue to pay the taxes in a place where you can't spread the taxes out.
As we're looking for pots of money, I do think that's where the IRA, the federal funds bill, is going to come in, because there's going to be a scramble to spend that and to get that, and I want Carlisle to be at the top of the list.
Me too.
Now, will that be affected at all by the new administration in DC? And
Good.
so is that why we're trying to get it out and
It won't be
get it
fast enough.
distributed before January 20th?
It's a great question, which I can't fully answer, but I will tell you that there was a big rush in the legislature to get this done regardless, just because it was time. And so I think that there was a sense of urgency no matter what was going to happen in the election. There's a lot of uncertainty now about what will happen with some of the priorities of the last administration. I would say that sometimes urgency, whether it's backed by fact or not, can be a good forcing mechanism. So I hope that everybody's just rolling as fast as they can in that direction, no matter what.
Yeah, I suppose.
Which of the members asked number 4?
Yes.
Okay, you want to just illuminate that one a little bit? Succinct.
So, this is more of a legal question about the MBTA Communities Act, because the law says that we have to have a zoning ordinance or bylaw that provides for one district of reasonable size, blah, 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 subject to 2 things. One, that this 15 units per acre and various other things, and 2, that it be located not more than a half mile from a commuter rail station, subway station, ferry terminal, or bus station, if applicable. And my question is, does if applicable mean if that's possible, and if it's not possible, it's not required? Or does it mean that no matter what, that it's only, yeah, I guess that's my major question. What does if applicable mean in lawyer language?
With all due respect, I feel like this is probably a question for town council, but I think what I can do on this is make sure that you have as clear of an answer as possible from EOHLC's point of view
Well,
on
I
this.
know what their
And-
point of view is.
And what is that?
That no matter what, you're going to have, whether you have a station or not, or a bus stop or not, you have to have this zone.
Mhm.
But, I mean, we don't even have a border which is within 3 miles of a station, let alone within half mile of a station. So I guess I'm asking also what you think about, for instance, the Medford suit, which I think is also kind of around, sorry, Milton, yes, sorry.
I thought, oh man,
I'm
another
okay,
one
I'm
that I
okay.
didn't even know
It's
about.
been a long day, so I apologize.
So, look, I think just to zoom out on this issue for a
Yes.
second, it is clear that Carlisle, so this law was passed under the Baker administration, and it's funny because I heard about it a bunch in Carlisle when I was running for office, because it had just passed at that time, and then really nothing for a long time. Part of the reason is that Carlisle is I forget exactly what the characterization is, but it has more time than some other communities. All 3 of the other towns that I represent have gone through they're at a different stage of the process now. And it was clear when the law was enacted that Carlisle is differently situated than I think other towns with its same characterization under the MBTA Communities Act. And now there's been this kind of interesting twist, which is that there's this lawsuit that injects a lot more uncertainty about what the enforcement mechanisms are going to be. I can't predict what the SJC is going to do there, and I can't do anything that's going to give you a good gauge of litigation risk as to any particular language in the statute. I feel like what my role is in this process is to find out at the right time what the town needs from an advocacy standpoint, which will likely happen interfacing with EOHLC, and I'm very happy to engage at that point in the process. My understanding of where the town is it's still the town is still getting together and going through that very difficult and laborious process of figuring out what it wants to be and where it wants to be with respect to this challenging situation. So you tell me where you want me to engage in that process, and I will, do everything I can to be effective in that.
Thank you. We are going to kind of move along here, but the next was the impact of the MCAS removal on the high-performing districts like ours, and more generally, how does the DES then monitor progress of lower-performing districts?
Yeah, so I'm way more concerned about the second question. I think with respect to the first question, I've heard some concerns, although I'll admit that I don't fully understand them yet, and that's not to say that they're not valid. It's just I've heard some concerns that I'm seeking more information about in terms of what this is going to do for certain students who do not or cannot pass the MCAS once they're old enough to graduate high school. There are certain triggers certain benefits or educational opportunities that now without an MCAS requirement, they may not get. So that's something that is going to need to be worked through. It's no secret that before the Massachusetts Teachers Association decided to make an effort to put this on the ballot, there were already discussions ongoing with all the key stakeholders with respect to what we're going to do about changing the state standards for graduation. Those conversations were not able to continue because there was a decision made to make an effort to put this on the ballot, and that kind of stalled everything out. I think we're gonna continue to have that conversation. I don't think that this ballot measure, and if I have anything to do with it, this ballot measure is not gonna be the last word on this issue, because we do need a state standard for graduation in Massachusetts. It is one of the reasons that we have the best public school system, although it's not perfect, in the entire country, is because when you have a graduation diploma from a Massachusetts public high school, you know that that actually means something. I am very concerned about the seriousness with which the MCAS is going to be taken as a equity measurement tool in schools now that it's not a graduation requirement, and I don't think that that has been paid sufficient attention, because one of the ways that we figure out what's happening in these school districts, and one of the ways that we knew, when we did the grand bargain in 1993 for a lot more state funding for schools, MCAS was part of that bargain. It's because we need to know what's going on in your districts if you want the state to be a financial partner, right? So you can probably see how I feel about this whole thing, but I just do not think that this is the end of the story. I'm very concerned about the second point that you raised, even though it's not particularly district specific. I know that a lot of people in Carlisle care about educational equity across the state and making sure that the bottom isn't falling out of some of these lower income school districts.
Yeah, thank you. We have two more, but one of them is, an opinion, your views on the MGL, the, auditing, and does that help or hurt? Is that
I guess the question would be, does it help or hurt what? Part of it has to do with, how it's going to be conducted and what's going to be conducted. Personally, I feel really comfortable with, I'm always trying to get better, but I feel comfortable with the work and the communication that I have with my constituents, and I feel like that relationship has been really strong. So I feel like I have nothing to fear. At the same time, it's very important to me that we're not distracted from some very important work that's going to be happening. And when I say distracted, I mean politically distracted from some very important work that's going to need to happen over the next 2+ years. So that's, my focus is going to stay on the issues, and I'll let folks who want to focus on that.
we have one last question from a member of the board. How can the Commonwealth, and particularly the MGL, protect the mass environment, our citizens, and even non-citizens under a Trump administration?
So I think that there's kind of two aspects of that question. And I first don't want to lose the opportunity to mention that we just passed a landmark climate bill, the second one that we have in 3 years. The core of that bill was to change siting and permitting and reform it to make it easier all across Massachusetts and fairer to build up clean energy infrastructure. And I think that I think that that's relevant too to the second part of the question. It's interesting that when the IRA and the CHIPS and Science Acts came down, who got most of that money? Like 80% of that money went to red states. Yeah. Right? That's not a political statement, it's just a factual statement. This was under the Biden administration. Why did that happen? Because they just have better rules and regulations and less red tape when it comes to developing clean energy infrastructure in those states. So it wasn't like let's do this as kind of a bipartisan handout. It was that those states were more ready to take advantage and build up, that clean energy economy. And Massachusetts, I think there's a recognition that we have been behind on that. And so that's going to help quite a bit for every type of clean energy project that's going to be feasible as we look towards the next administration. Now, I think it's no secret that offshore wind is going to face some challenges, probably, or at least that's, I think, how the administration's stance is going to be, but that doesn't mean that we're going to give up on that. I think there's still going to remain a lot of opportunities for solar. Out in Devon, there's some really cool stuff happening with Commonwealth Fusion. So I think there's going to be there will continue to be a lot of opportunities. Something that I know a lot of Carlisle residents care about, because many Carlisle residents have reached out to me, is what's happening at Hanscom. And we did, really grateful to my House colleagues and the House delegation, fought for language that I drafted to change Massport's charter for the first time since 1956 to force Massport to incorporate environmental considerations into its decision-making, as into all of its exercise of decision-making authority. That's not necessarily determinative of what's going to happen with the Hanscom expansion, but I think it significantly changes the state of play. We fought and worked to object to the DEIR, the draft environmental impact report that was submitted by the project proponent, and it was turned back by the EEA a few days later. And so that's project is in limbo, but that was part of the climate bill that we passed and that Governor Healy signed into law just, I think, last week. Happy to talk more about that, but that's kind of where we are on that.
I think that's great. These were questions that were prepared by the board, so we appreciate your time. If you have a few minutes, I know you have another meeting to go to, but we are going to have a joint meeting with the FinCom and talk about, launch into a summary budget discussion, and I think it might be helpful for you to see firsthand, some of the things and hear that if you have time. But I want to say on behalf of the board, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it
Thank you for your
very
service.
much. Yeah, in your service.
I really appreciate all you're doing. You are not paid enough. None of you are. And I just want to reiterate like how much I understand that you're in an impossible situation right now. All of our municipalities are. We're seeing that get really tough in some communities around here, and I just hope that you continue to see me as your advocate to do everything I can. And if it's okay, I just want to do a shameless plug for Carlisle residents to reach out to me when they have issues about with the RMV, unemployment insurance, anything related to a state agency. My office can help. It's simon.cataldo@mahouse.gov, and also to pay attention in the Mosquito or on social media for the office hours that I hold here at the office, the town office.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And I will stick around for as long as I can.
Yeah, you'll see in the new budget that we're giving ourselves 100% raise.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, great. 0 times 100.
The FinCom takes all the cookies.
All right, so if FinCom, you want to open your meeting and
Sure.
we can.
Do you want us front and center? Or you
Yeah, it's easier because the
Makes sense to me.
speaker just can pick you up easier, but.
And the cookies are there.
I'm just gonna move a chair.
You have to pay for it. I'll sit on this side.
Did you want us to take the cookies?
Ryan, do you control the Zoom?
I do, yeah.
Victor sent me a message that he was in the waiting room. I don't know if you've let him in yet or not.
Is he the one called iPhone?
I think.
Potentially. He said he was physically calling, so.
And I will let him in.
Okay.
Nathan went over to the dark side, huh?
Hello.
Hey, hey.
Hi.
Yeah, hi Nathan.
Hello. Good to see you all.
Familiar
You
face.
too.
So, I'd like to do a roll call meeting, a roll call to start the Finance Committee joint meeting.
Bernstein, aye.
Cataccio, aye.
Delia, aye.
Will and I.
Aye.
And on Zoom,
Schoberg, aye.
Liang, aye.
all right, thank you.
All right, I'm up. So
Go for it, Ryan.
I'm gonna walk everyone around a little bit, but here's the general plan. So I just want to talk a little bit about the FY24 closure. So there's 3 dates we're talking about: FY24 closing. We're in FY25, and then this is all about FY26. So I just want to talk about budget performance in FY24, the process that gathered this budget document, and then I'll go through the budget document systematically to provide context. So first, looking very briefly at FY24. Why this matters is for understanding how expenses performed and how revenue performed in order to inform some of the later assumptions that are in these budget documents. So in closing FY24, we see that we underspent by 2.27%, which equated to about $500,000. which is right around what we're targeting to do when we spend. Maybe it's a little bit more. So you don't want to spend every single dollar, because we do have to generate some free cash, and the budget does need some resiliency, but you don't want to go so far with that you're over budgeting and doing that on purpose. So then on the revenue side, we exceeded our estimates by 3%, which is a little over $1 million. So combined, those two returned $1.5 million in free cash. And if you remember our discussions, we're looking to generate somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million in order to fund capital plan, etc. So revenue, which I'm going to show you here, way outperformed what we thought. So there is some conservatism there, and there's also some one-time exceptions that I'd like you to understand. So looking at revenues, one thing we like to see in my revenue charts is everything's green. So green means everything overperformed. Yellow would mean we have some worries about it, and red would be it underperformed. So every revenue category performed well. There's a couple in particular that I'm not sure that we can rely on, and one of them is earnings on investments. So we expected to earn $20,000, and we earned almost $200,000. So a lot of the extra revenue came from there. Now, Sandy is reporting that our investments continue to be up in FY25, so it's not going away, but that is historic in terms of our performance on that side. We also performed very well on tax collection, and another big feeder was motor vehicle excise tax. Not surprisingly, since the value of everything went up, we're collecting more on motor vehicle excise tax. So now I want to show you local receipts, which is one of our...
When you said we overperformed on tax collection, is that by virtue of doing a better job collecting taxes, or is it just more taxes?
Both. So it's getting the taxes that were owed in arrears and making sure that we collect at a very high level. So I will give Carlisle a ton of credit for a lot of things, but Carlisleans pay their taxes, so it is helpful. So this is numbers soup here, but I'd like to call your attention to the bottom numbers, and they're very tiny, so I'm going to talk about them. So 5-6 years ago, if you look at what we said we were going to bring in for local receipts and then what we actually did, the town was doing about 90%. And best practice is 85 to 90% in your projections, because revenue can go up and down. You want to make sure there's a little bit of a cushion, and if there is a little bit of a cushion, then you turn that into free cash for other spending purposes.
Meaning you underestimate by 10%.
Ish, yes.
So a lower percentage down there means we did more than, we were too conservative.
Correct. So the last 3 years, last year in particular, 65%, and the 2 years prior, 70 and 79%. So why am I?
D, excuse me, but column D is the most recent year?
Yes.
Okay.
Someday in our journey, Ryan, I'll teach you how to freeze your pain so we can the titles on that thing.
I want to talk about it, but I also want to show you that it comes from somewhere. I'm not really, I know that's not great, but so the point of showing you that is there is some conservatism in our revenue projections, which is something you should think about. Now, the less conservative you get with this, the more likely it is you're not going to generate free cash, which is going to create a capital problem. Okay, so which problem do you want to address? Right now, we're generating a lot of free cash to help with deferred maintenance and buildings, etc. But it's squeezing the operating budget. If you go the other way, you're not going to have as much free cash to play with in order to play with is the wrong term. In order to fund capital.
But some people would say you're overtaxing.
Right.
Right.
Unless you have a plan for it. So we have more capital than we can afford.
Just have to be disciplined in that.
Yes. All right, and then to talk quickly about process. So you all met and talked about goals for the budget process for FY26. We went through exercises on financial forecasting and capital planning in order to inform those goals. We sent all of those goals to the departments and the people that create budgets in town, and then they sent their requests to include their operating budget requests, to include their capital articles and their warrant articles. So all of that was gathered into what we're calling draft 1 of the budget to present to you tonight. In terms of analysis of that draft, we did some analysis with the liaisons and myself, meaning any questions that people had, they met with their liaisons or they met with me to talk about what would be appropriate to ask for And in those discussions, it might have shaped a little bit of the budget request that you see in front of you. However, in this draft, we did not, and I say we, I mean the finance team, did not edit anything, did not change any of the requests. We're presenting you the full request. So there was some influencing on not over-requesting, but we didn't say, okay, this is more important than that, or do any prioritization. We're leaving that to you.
Have you guys seen this?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Still getting used to the new.
Not yet.
So this is.
So this is just,
We
a-
can all
the
gasp at the
unveiling.
same time.
this is just the gathered budget. So now I'll get into the budget. Just want to give you a little context. So using that process, the overall operating budget increase, assuming no changes, no analysis, no cuts, would be a 5.18% increase. Okay, and this would result in a 5.0% rise in the average tax bill, with recent goals being 3% tax increase. So this is a significant increase to the level that some would consider an override in other towns. So we have excess levy capacity, so we have the ability to bring this to town meeting without going for a debt exclusion, but this would be well above 2.5%, a bigger increase than is normal.
Excuse me, this is not just operating, it's operating and capital,
No,
just operating.
just
That's
operating.
what I wanted to
We haven't
clarify.
gotten to the fun part yet.
Yeah, right.
Oh, so just operating, okay.
So what I'm gonna walk you through is the available revenue, projected expenses, the debt, the tax impact of all of that operating. Then I'll get into capital, proposed warrant articles, how that impacts our town reserves, and then what's next. Okay, so I talk a little bit here about excess levy capacity and also the fact that the town has used free cash in the last 2 years in order to offset the tax rate. So increased use of free cash in the operating budget allows for the tax rate to go down, or it becomes another revenue source other than taxes, local receipts, or state aid. And I showed you the revenue for a reason. So this projection in this budget, to include that tax impact, is built off of assumptions that have state aid increasing by 1%. We just heard the representative talk about there's not going to be a huge amount of state aid increase. 1% is probably a little bit low, but 2% would only yield 40,000 to Carlisle, so it's not going to save us. In fact, when they talk about state aid, it's one of the least impactful things for Carlisle, because we just don't get a lot, unless it's on the education side. So that increase from 60 to 100 in students really did help the town, and that's where we can provide our biggest advocacy. So local receipts has a 2% increase built in, based off of conservatism and historical average. That is where you could lessen the conservatism in order to drop some of the tax impact numbers. But for the sake of this presentation, that is the assumption that's built in. 1% for state aid, 2% for local receipts. It also, as you see here, does not include any free cash or other one-time funds to help offset any of these costs. So I gave you the high-level 5.1% increase in town spending, and I want to talk about some of the highlights. And all of this will be turned over to the Finance Committee for their analysis and meeting, and I'm keeping it at a very high level. But we did go through each line. Kelly did a great job putting all this together for this presentation. So some structural changes to the budget that I want to make sure that you're looking at and are aware of. We did create and pull out a human resource budget. This was a budget neutral exercise, but we pulled from all the places where human resources to spend money to create a human resources department. So we pulled money from the select board, the town administrator, the treasurer, and the health insurance line items and put it under its own budget for transparency purposes. We also continued to create the facilities department budget as we've been requested to do. So this is making sure that we have a strong understanding of the town side, combining everything on the town side under one facilities budget. The school committee is aware of this. They're doing that on the school side, although theirs is already pretty mature. And the goal is for FY27 to combine the two under town control. That is what I've been directed to do so far. Of course, you can change that. We've also combined the planning and ZBA budgets. The unfortunate loss of our town clerk allowed us to reconsider the ZBA position, and we moved that under the town planner in the planning office. So the planning office handles the ZBA staff support now, so those budgets were combined. So far, all neutral in terms of cost increases. And then animal control. So we're having difficulty finding animal control officers. So We have worked with the police department, and you'll see later, they're gonna request a 13th officer this year, and we're gonna roll animal control under that officer's job description, so taking the animal control money to help offset that. I'll get into it, but the 13th officer also is gonna create some dispatch redundancy, and then I do think in future years, we can farm out our animal control officer to other towns as a revenue source for the town. But more to come on that, and definitely something for the finance committee to consider. All right, so some expense highlights from all of the department requests. A 4.41% increase for the Carlisle Public Schools is the current number that I have. That would equate to $582,000 in new spending. So to put that into context for you, $1 million in new spending is about a 2.7% increase on the average tax bill. Okay, so the school request alone is almost 60% of a normal year's ask. So last year, the new spend was about $1 million. So that's about 60% of the new spend in that area. And I'll try to do that for each one of these. So CCRHS is a 3.58% increase. However, that does not include the declining debt that the regional school has. So without the debt, it's a 4.24% increase on the regional high school budget. Why that's important, a lot of the discussions on the capital side talk about how our declining debt will allow us to absorb more capital costs. John Valentine talks about that a lot with his long-term projections. So this is that declining debt. So if you're replacing the declining debt with new spend, and I'm not editorializing on this, but that capacity is going away because of operating costs.
It shouldn't be funding operating costs.
Well, it's just the way you present it. So Concord's guidelines to the schools are based off a number without debt for that reason, because they have a plan for the declining debt. And we should too, but I understand there's a lot of pressures on the schools as well. I'm not commenting on their budgets at all. I did include, this is the only thing I included on my own, was a 2% townwide COLA, and I included that in this so that you could see what that impact was, rather than saying, what are you gonna do? I included one in, and you can adjust it or take it out, etc. But I wanted you to see that number applied into the budget. And this does include a 1% increase for employee performance. If they get a meets expectation review, then we built in a step scale in the wage scale. We've been talking about that for a couple years. All right, some employee changes in the budget. So there is a request from the Board of Health for more staff hours. There's a request from the fire department for an increase in the EMS coordinator's wages based off long-time low COLAs and job performance. There is a combination of the two public safety admins into one full-time position. We're doing this in a cost-neutral way in FY25, but it would have an impact on FY26. So why is this important? The public safety admin does HR and payroll for all public safety. It's pretty complex on the fire side with the call, and any police admin is a very complex position. So we don't think that we would be able to hire part-time people to do either into the future. So combining them into one full-time professional role, and then eventually rolling in dispatch as well, would allow that person to be connected to HR and finance in a way that would strengthen the entire town in terms of following policy, etc. I'm requesting that we add a budget officer title to the town accountant's position. This is for her own personal growth, but also the position's growth, and would be a move towards eventually having a finance director back in Carlisle over a multi-year conversation about it and doing it correctly, which is building a finance department. I talked a little bit about the 13th officer for the police department. So this officer would be focused heavily on animal control and would also reduce, or it would eliminate the town's use of part-time officers. So the part-time officers are budgeted at $75,000. The animal control officer is budgeted at $10,000. So this is, it sounds like you're adding a person, but it's really adding about half an officer or less because of the other revenues that go into it. We also, and I'm supportive of this, the state is moving towards certified officers. So the idea that a part-time officer would be something that we could hire, I think is gonna go away in the next 4 or 5 years. So this is part of a plan to move towards making sure that we're not just caught one year having to do a bunch of things because of state requirements or other things. And I also said this earlier, there is a need for animal control in the region. And one of the things we talk about with regionalization is adding on to other people's services. I think we can host it and get revenue from this. And I'd love to talk to the Finance Committee more about that. But Westford, other towns would be interested in using our animal control officer, and we might be able to use this to offset police costs if we were the ones that were to build this up. Talked about adding ZBA staff work to the town planner, and this increased the positions hours. I'm trying not to talk about people, from 33 to 35, and this is budget neutral. It's actually a savings because of the ZBA wages are being rolled into the planning budget. And then there's a small, I'm adding it here for transparency, but we've been focusing a lot on professional development and sustainment, so each department has a little bit of an increase in their professional development. All right, the biggest whack we took this year in the budget is a 28.63% increase in the Middlesex retirement assessment. So that's $420,000 of new money from that. There is an option that we're gonna have to discuss during this to smooth that out. So make it 19 and 19 rather than 28 and 6, but you pay a premium to do that. So it would help us in FY26, but would be more cost over the 2 years. They're calling it a smoothing option, but it's really just borrowing money from them in order to pay the assessment later. Our health insurance has indicated that 10% would be a good number to budget for. We continue to have poor performance on the health insurance side, plus the increase in health insurance costs that everybody is feeling. We believe 10% is the right number. It does include a 1% increase for health insurance splits, as was previously committed to talking to, not to doing. The Board of Health is, we talked about that. There is a little bit more money for Cranberry Bog maintenance. If you remember last year, $16,500 was put into a warrant article to help really dig into the Cranberry Bog maintenance and other town land maintenance budgets, to really dig into that and figure out what it costs. The end result was about a $6,000 increase in their budget line, but we feel like we have a strong grasp on that maintenance line now that we can build on, which you'll get a presentation about. The DPW asked for $10,000 more in vehicle maintenance. They've already spent their entire vehicle maintenance budget as of now, and there's still 6 months to go. Luckily, we have winter funding to help get them through the majority of the remainder of the year, but they're going to need more funding in the future for vehicle maintenance. The Cultural Council asked to match their state grant in the budget process, so they asked for $5,700 to come into the operating budget to help them with their mission. This does hold debt capacity level, which I'll talk about during the debt conversation. And I did throw a good news bullet at the bottom here. There was a decrease in vocational spending. We fully committed to a student through their vocational education, and they are graduating, so we're happy for that, and that we were able to give that, but that does reduce the cost. We have one more student in the school, and they'll graduate and come off the budget in FY27. So assuming no one goes in, there'll be a big savings next year. Either way, you pay for the van to go to the vocational school, so that cost stays the same. The only thing we're decreasing is the tuition.
Ryan, can you debt increase for the 28%? Is that just a one-time and it goes away next year, or in 27 rather?
So it goes up,
It stays.
and then it's 6%, and then they reassess every 2 years.
Got it.
So Middlesex, and this is very unscientific, but they are not in the top end of retirement systems in terms of being fully funded by 2037. So we can expect that to continue as they catch up.
I have another question about the increase in the employee, investments in the Board of Health inspection staffing. Is that the extra staffing they had in their budget, or is this additional staffing?
So that's an error. I'll take that out of this. So they had their additional staffing request, not in inspectional staffing. That shouldn't be there, that line.
This line should not be here.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about debt. So some upcoming borrowing needs. The fire truck that was authorized last year, $975,000, because of new emission standards and inflation, is about $325,000 short. So in order to buy that truck 3 years from now, they're now requesting 1.3 million in cost. So we won't be borrowing for 3 years for the fire truck, but if we agree to it now and sign it, it'll only be 1.3 and not whatever it's gonna be in 3 years. The emission standard is impacting their entire large fleet, so they're not producing DPW trucks right now, trying to catch up with standards and emissions. And the fire trucks, they're estimating $60,000 to $150,000 in cost per fire truck just to meet the emission standards. So a lot of this is that, which was not known when we priced this at town meeting. And the fire chief, if he was here, would say it. He also was scared to ask for $1 million, just because he thought it was over what he needed, and he didn't want to hit the $1 million, and he wished he'd asked for 1.2. It probably would have been too much at the time, but anyways, we're going to be talking about the fire truck. Elevators. We've tried to make you all aware of the elevator issue. We're currently building construction documents to bring a bid to town meeting for 3 elevators, one in the school, one in the library, and one here in the building. And that cost is going to be $1 million. So we'll be borrowing for that. And then future borrows on the proposed capital plan include the town hall roof and RTU, the entire dispatch radio system, HVAC replacements in the Grant building, and then eventually the fuel system at the DPW. So this is a chart that shows the impacts when they come on the budget. So you'll notice in FY26 there's no impact. So there is money in the debt line that could be removed if you don't want to hold the capacity for future borrowing. But then borrows start to come into play first with the elevators in FY27, and then most of the stuff I talked about in FY28, and then the fuel cells in FY29. So this is better seen in a chart. I'm sorry, a graph. So gray would be where we are now in terms of borrowing. The orange would be what is being proposed in terms of debt, and if we didn't hold it constant, blue is where our debt is going, so declining debt.
If you don't borrow more.
If we don't borrow money, yep.
And that number on the left is the annual cost of the debt?
Annual cost.
So it translates into operating savings if it declines.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to meet the overage this year, there will be I'm sure, wanting to pull back the debt line in order to drop it because we're not borrowing. But if you do that, you're gonna have to increase it again. So it'll be like adding something to the budget. So you could either use that pot of money for small cap and handle some of the items on the capital plan, or use it to lower the tax rate and know you'll have to spike in a couple years.
And can you translate, so the difference in capital spend, let's just use the years in front of us. So if we decided we want to keep debt service equal, and I realize there's timing issues, but let's pretend we waved the magic wand at 25 to spend capital to keep the gray line at that debt service. How much borrowing capacity is that between the blue and the gray?
This year it'd be about 50,000.
So that's like nothing, but out in 2035. That
That is
600,000 enables how much?
800,000. So the existing debt is in the second column. So without doing anything, it drops from 1.2 million.
Okay,
to
so maybe I can try with that another way. So in other words, you're saying if we were to hold the debt service line constant, then we would be able to, no, it doesn't translate. What size borrowing, like what project could we put in there that would, like what size project would make the line level? How many millions of dollars?
The existing debt is the interest payment, right?
No, it's
Service
that-
and
It's
interest.
the service, yeah.
This, yeah, so how many, what's the principal that we can borrow?
Yeah, that's right.
In order to pay that same amount? So what is 800,000 in annual
Yeah.
8
principal
million.
interest?
8 million, okay, good, all right.
It's
So
about-
it's like a fire station.
It's about 100,000 per million.
Fire station light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fire station, don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Assuming we don't do trucks and elevators and.
I'm glad Nathan's here today too, because I totally channeled you yesterday when I was reading about the overage on the police station. It now is coming in at 3 point what?
All right, so $1 million in new spending, like I said, is about 2.7% tax increase in the average tax bill, or $463 on the average tax bill for each resident. Just something to put things into context. So here is the impact of the operating budget on taxes. And this is an estimate using a levy tool that Brian and I created in order to help you estimate the impact of budget decisions. So everything above the revenue line is the entire operating budget is line 1, and then those other costs are driven by state mandates. So overlays is abatements and exemptions. State and county charges, they give you state aid and then they take some of it back. And same with cherry sheet offsets. So all of that is estimated at historic rates in order to create an expenses line of $37 million. Revenue comes from the,
Wait, no, not a revenue,
No, it's not revenue.
it's expenses
It's
line.
expenses that
Oh,
add up.
ATM budget, sorry, okay, gotcha, sorry.
The next one's revenue.
so the next one is revenue. There's that state aid projection and the local receipts projection we talked about earlier. That combines with taxes in order to create the revenue that pays for these items. The amount to be raised on taxes is the difference between these expenses and this revenue, which creates,
They could really just net those out to make it simple. It makes it more
For
complicated.
now, assuming no
than it needs.
free
I
cash.
haven't had a chance to look at this
For anything.
before, so
I know.
I can't find any of these things.
what's that?
You had 0 for free cash.
Yes, no free cash.
Yeah.
That's up to you. So what does this summarize to be? A proposed.
You kind of skipped over that. Just
Yeah.
go back up.
You don't like when I talk about this, David, because it doesn't matter to Carlisle, because we have excess levy capacity.
But,
So it just
I mean,
creates a levy.
basically, the coming year, we need to raise $33.5 million is what you're saying, from some sources.
No, that's how much we can tax.
Oh, okay.
We can tax higher.
We can tax higher.
We can tax higher.
So what we can tax is 33 million plus the Prop 2.5 plus the growth, which equals our max levy, but we never use that number. We use excess levy capacity. So it's, I think, more helpful to use what the proposed levy increase would be and what that impact is on the average tax bill. So you'll see here, everything proposed in the operating budget is a 5.07%
Wait,
increase.
I guess I'm missing a step. So can you go back up to the page prior? Way at the tippy top, I mean, you said right there, budget request. So if we just took like what you know today, line 1, the 37 million, that's like rolling up everybody's request without having scrubbed it, right?
Yes.
So maybe a better way to say it is, if everybody got everything they wanted today, we need to raise 37 million, and the state will give us some, so we are at 33.5 million, right? That is what we would have to raise through real estate taxes to pay for all the stuff, if all the state aid and everything came in. Right?
Yes.
Now you're going down to the next line and saying, okay, if we did that, this is what it would cost the average tax bill, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's,
I would.
it's not the 36 is the point that we're
Yeah,
talking about. It's
it's
the
33
33
and
and
it
a
Yeah,
half.
we understand that now.
Yeah, okay. Anyway.
And you also consume a quarter of your excess levy capacity.
Yes, we'd be using a lot of excess levy capacity. I will caution that the scrubbing is not going to yield much without pain. So there's going to be some difficult choices here.
Can you remind us last year, like, the pre-scrub to the scrubbed? Or did we go from 5 point, I don't remember.
Oh, yeah, we-
I don't think it came in at 5%.
4 to 3-ish.
Four and change to 3 and change
Yeah.
Went down a percent.
percent. Yeah.
So we could expect to go down at least a percent. Is that typical each year?
It's getting harder with with the two schools and if you took the 2 schools in Middlesex out of it, then you're left with cutting people.
But you're also, you didn't add any capital projects last year. This is just operating, or this is operating?
It's just operating.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question, like, how do we think about this with those big capital projects up there?
Well, that's
right?
the whole point.
You know, so we're starting at
That's the next
5.
step.
Yeah, you need, right, he's going to that.
Oh,
What
okay.
about,
It's a good question, right
There
to
we go.
capital.
We're going
I
to
tried to
the-
reorganize it to think
make
like
a good straight man.
We start with 5, right? So,
It won't get better.
All right, so, Carlisle departments submitted 3.471 million in capital requests for FY '26 alone. Okay, I'm not gonna go over each thing, that'll be part of the budget process, but, there were things added and changed and prioritized during the fall budget process, and those things are now in the budget. The biggest add
The budget request.
to the capital plan is a $220,000 request to replace the CAD system for dispatch and the police department, which is an end-of-life increase that was not on the previous capital plan. So it is creating some pain. So here is the rolled-up list of capital, with each item to be vetted by you and the finance committee. I'll remind you that we talked a lot about road maintenance. That's one line in here. Here's the CAD system here. And then the elevators that we talked about are down here. So all of that equates to the 3 million.
How far off is that from before you started this process, based on your 5-year capital plan, the 5-year capital plan?
From the fall to now, or from
Yeah.
last year to now?
From last year's projection, in other words, kind of like how much got added through this process that wasn't in,
Not much. Not much to.
most was on there?
Yeah.
Good,
CAD is the biggest add.
yeah, okay.
Okay. So financing this. And we'll talk about warrant articles in a second. But to finance this, some of the offsets include Chapter 90, CPA, debt, and then other is the ambulance reserve fund, essentially, for some of those fire requests. Would net a balance needed from free cash of 1.8 million. So if you took all the article requests and you took out all the other ways to pay for it, the only other way to pay for it is free cash or borrowing. If we could do more borrowing too, which would have more operating impact.
Or just raise the tax. When you say borrowing, you don't mean excluded debt, you just mean.
Yeah, and
Why
whatever,
would- What?
whatever way you want it to.
Whatever way you want. Well, so there's really three things, right? There's free cash, there's take on debt, and there's raised taxes.
That's just taking some of the ambulance fund, or that's not depleting the ambulance fund?
It's not depleting it. So it brings in about 100,000 a year. It has about 400,000 right now. Using 130 of it would allow it to continue to grow to eventually pay for the ambulance that it needs to replace. So using it judiciously would be helpful. It's also a source to help offset some of the tax impact if you want.
Okay, yeah, that was what my next question was gonna be, is like, are we making sure that we will be able to purchase an ambulance next time?
Yeah. So we're encouraging you to use it, but not so much that you don't eventually pay for the ambulance.
So, show those bullets, so all those bullets, and what do you have, like 8 bullets? Those are all your suggestions, or of how, if you don't do those are in the budget?
These were the suggestions we vetted during the fall working group.
And they were accepted by the departments that were proposing them?
Departments just want their stuff. How you choose to pay for it is, they're not gonna balk.
For instance, like, the Retcon wants a pickleball court, and they're expecting the town to pay for that. Out
They're
of the
expect-
budget?
They're expecting to use a CPA.
They were, so they already were planning on using CPA funds. Of course, which comes out of the taxes.
Which like is its own
Of course.
presentation.
Yeah. It's not a free,
Trying to show
free
it in
lunch.
totality.
If approved.
Right.
We have the chair right here. Okay, so included in that number was, you'll see 94,000 in warrant articles. So I'm gonna go through these. Again, this could be its own presentation. But here is the draft, very draft warrant article, warrant for town meeting. So you'll see some of the normal things on there. OPEB is an actuary study that we have to do every 2 years. So we split that bill in half and ask the town to support it each year. There's no new budget impact from what we've already talked about for any of the capital articles or anything like that until you get to the planning board, who's requesting some consultant support for their MBTA communities work. The Board of Health is requesting funds for a mosquito monitoring program. And this one again could be its own presentation, but the COHS is asking to support the senior tax program. So the town passed an abatement program a couple years ago, and that's gonna carry a cost on the overlay. We've been funding that through a internal program, first that was funded by ARPA, and then was funded by CPA, or the CPC, and now it will likely impact the tax base to a level that we're not sure yet. We're still doing analysis, but we think it'll be 50,000. So you can add that to the budget that we already talked about.
So that would become an ongoing part of the operating budget.
Yes. If it's not funded through CPA funds or free cash.
Yeah, we forgot to ask Simon, because there used to be a bill that was floating around that would have reimbursed towns for whatever money they were losing from the senior tax program. Well, that, anyway, but, okay.
Right, so all of that is summed up on this chart. So the 94,000 from the warrant articles, plus the capital, plus all the other sources of funding, nets a deficit, you can call it, of 1.8 million to be decided.
And none of this includes the buildings yet.
Correct. Okay, so let's talk about the impact on reserves. So this free cash estimate of 4.8 is based off what we just submitted to the state, so it's not final yet, but it is a strong estimate. If you add the stabilization account, which has been growing due to interest, you have a total reserve level of about 6.2 million. So if you take your 12% reserve target, that gives you a cash above reserve target of 1.762, which is a little bit less than the balance that's here.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the projected free cash use, which there'll be some deficit there that'll have to be controlled. And then if you used it all, if you used free cash for everything that was asked and you paid for everything, which would never happen in any town ever, but if you did everything that everyone asked, your reserve levels would be just a little bit below your target, so 11.66%.
Meaning, sorry, 1.7, you used up all the 1.7 or 8 million.
Yeah, saying you paid for everything.
Right.
You would be eating into your reserves a little bit.
Well, you said that's the excess you had over the 12%, right? But what that leaves you, I mean, to think of it simply, let's just say we did that. It cleans up all those capital items, but what doesn't it do? It doesn't address a 5% operating budget increase, and it doesn't even start to talk about the downstream borrowing we're gonna get into with our various capital projects.
Okay, so here's what I think are the large budget discussions that you'll need to consider, and of course, you will have your own opinions on what is large and small in the budget. But whether or not to smooth the retirement assessment will be important. Do you want to buy yourself some time and some wiggle room, but pay for it in FY27? So instead of a $420,000 whack, it would be a $300,000 whack each year.
But how much more does it cost to do it?
100,000.
100,000?
The cost, what do you mean by cost?
No.
The eventual cost would be
Yeah.
Premium to do that.
I would
Oh,
say-
premium, oh.
Yeah, no,
shoot.
that's too
stupid.
much.
That's stupid.
That's a
Usually
huge
called a
percentage.
usury.
That's
That's
usurious.
$100,000, basically, they're
Really?
making
They charge you that
$100,000
much?
interest
How
on
can they do that?
$600,000.
Outrageous.
We should just borrow the money then.
So this is why,
No,
No,
absolutely.
really, we would just
Right.
borrow the money and take and then do it that way.
Yeah.
That's
that's why I
ridiculous.
put this as bullet one of the large discussions to come.
Okay.
That's a no.
Yeah, that's a no.
We're doing well, what else? we
Moving
got?
right along.
So finalizing the health insurance coverage, finalizing the school budgets, COLA and benefits discussions is always something. The structural HR changes, and one-time revenue use. I think.
Yeah, but Ryan, I mean, those are tactical responses to the bigger problem, which is, you know, like I said, I mean, yes, we're fortunate that we have a nice surplus of free cash. And we can have a policy discussion about whether we should be at 90% of revenue projections or 80%, you know, okay, fine. But at the end of the day, that relatively small amount of free cash, it helps us, but it doesn't, the two big issues we have are we're running operating budgets at 5, 4, you pick your percentage, but well over 2.5, right, 2.5%. And we're looking at a $3.5 million police station, which we're already on the road to borrowing for, about to get into, you know, somewhere in the $10 million plus range of a fire station. We got, I'm sorry, Council on Aging, but you probably picked a really bad time to come in and ask for another building.
No,
And we haven't talked about DPW.
Right.
Well, okay, but regardless, and we've got a DPW discussion. So that to me is the major thing we have to get like our brains around. Like, how are we gonna do all that and what's gonna give if we do it?
Okay, so everyone in the room is well aware of the timeline, but January is when, so now is when I hand this over to the Finance Committee from the departments for your work and recommendation back to the Select Board in April. And then May is right now the projected town meeting. The buildings kept coming up, so I just wanted to show you, remind you what we talked about in the fall.
And are you guys having your departmental meetings, or have those been scheduled yet?
January 8th and 9th.
So here is the annual cost to the operating budget of buildings based off some assumptions, 5% borrowing, useful life terms of 20, 30 years, and the average tax bill impact. So police is approved and will hit the average tax bill starting in 2 years of about $150 per home. So what does that equal? About 0.75% of what the operating budget impact is. And then fire and DPW, these again assumptions, would be the equivalent of, if you look at kind of the median before it starts to decline again, it's about what this budget projects for an increase. So it's a 4 to 5% increase on the average tax bill, in addition to the annual increase.
But also, Ryan, so back to the, like where you started, we talked about if we didn't do any of that, we have a declining balance, which in by 35, which I presume is sort of the bottom of this chart, would be $8 million of borrowing capacity, which itself is, I forget what it was, but it was somewhere in the neighborhood of that much money, right?
Yes.
So again, it would be useful in that first chart to overlay these things and see where that line goes.
15?
You know that very beginning chart?
Yeah. You're talking about
You mean the graph?
The graph,
the
yeah.
cost
Yeah.
of the borrowing, carrying the borrowing.
Because it looks like, oh
in
geez,
that budget.
800, like that's a ton of money, but maybe it's not as bad.
This is non-building debt. So this
Oh,
is that
just
curve we
not-
talked
okay,
about.
right, that's okay.
The slide with the gray line that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, the gray
Is
one
that-
is
That
that-
graph, yeah.
Is the,
That
is,
was non-building debt though.
No, that was
No,
total.
That was total debt?
That was mostly buildings.
That's just the cost of carrying
Well,
all
what
of
it
our debt.
shows is
So it's old buildings plus.
it's old buildings, right? So,
Okay.
yeah, there's always other stuff in there.
Right.
But I mean, the big drivers are buildings, right? So if you go,
Well, yeah. A couple $2 million things and next thing you're talking
Yeah,
is big,
exactly.
is
Right,
real
I know.
money, right?
right, but the big driver downward is not that. The
Right,
big driver is
right.
because the building, the
Right,
school
right.
buildings are getting paid for it. So
Right.
if you overlay these other buildings in there, I think that would be a useful graph.
And I guess I think we need to continue to carry about $1,250,000 in our operating budget for debt. Keep the gray line. in
Well,
other
that's
words.
what that's what we
And-
would see when we
right.
had those buildings. It may not be as bad as, the last graph shows.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is even as things are declining, if we keep that in our budget and put that into free cash, it'll be there for when it spikes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a
Put it in
different way to say it.
stabilization, yes.
so you should, the other, table you showed, at the height of borrowing, we needed 1.8 million, right, on the other slide.
Right,
And
right.
so this is saying we've got, I don't know, the spread's like 800K or something, so that means that we only need an additional.
Yeah,
1
right,
million.
exactly. So it makes the mountain not as tall.
Yeah.
Still doesn't address a 5% slope in your operating line, which is a concern, but it helps us rationalize. I mean, again, I'm saying a lot of negative things, but, you know we need a police station. We're pretty certain we need a fire station. if you've walked around DPW, you're gonna come to the conclusion, we need to do something there. These guys certainly have a case to make for, something for seniors, so, yeah, you gotta.
Aren't there other things also already taking up some of that difference, like the fire truck and other dump trucks and things like that as we go along that are
The
already
next
taking
fire
up
truck.
some of that?
And the next
Right.
fire truck, yeah.
So that's
Yes.
1.3
So,
million,
there it
that's
goes,
already
yeah.
taken up of that's a third of the police station, so that gap may not be quite as big.
Right, no, that's right, that's right.
Let's see, so in this analysis, what do you call it, the Plan A or something?
Draft one.
Draft one, there's no, you didn't, remember we had the effort last year, we wanted to scrub all the, what are the accounts that the.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
revolving
The
accounts.
revolving accounts, you didn't assume we're gonna get anything. We may, as we meet, we may find that we have other revenue sources that you haven't yet accounted for, is that true?
I think it helps, I don't think it
No,
would fix
no,
it.
we won't get millions of dollars, but, okay, and in addition, so what's, if IRA funds come, when would that be, 27? Would we expect to see anything in 26? Because something should happen this year. Like, do we have any knowledge of what that might bring?
So there's a few hopeful horizons.
Oh.
Green communities and climate leader can help defer some of this capital cost, for sure, if we can commit to that. The IRA, I think, will help. And then the reason why we spend so much time investigating roads and culverts, et cetera, is because we want to position ourselves for grant monies. And we've started to. Strap grants, culvert grants, and other grants. So we think we can bring this down with the staff that we have. But we wanted you to see the full picture so that you're making decisions in that context. Because you're gonna find yourself in a real big problem in a couple of years.
And this, your budget here had for FY 26 had what, 800,000 for roads?
Yes.
Out of which, what, half of that is out of the town budget?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's where you,
It's a lot.
Declining, or is that
Mhm.
maintained?
No, it's
No.
going up.
No, I'm not talking about the money, I'm talking about when we were
Maintains.
seeing
Maintaining.
that
It's the
charge.
maintains.
that
Maintains it.
It's maintaining.
yes.
But, you know,
But we didn't, Nathan, since you left the board, we got onto culverts, which is a whole nother sort of undiscovered liability that we're trying, that
And
Brian's.
pass over one that was discovered every day.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was
That's only
twice
temporary.
twice as expensive because we discovered it. So we're trying to not
Not discovered.
discover them by
Right, close your eyes.
having them fall.
yeah, and then what was the software that came out of the blue?
Oh, the
You have to
CAD.
recapitalize?
CAD.
The CAD, all right, so how do I know that there's not 5 other softwares that need to be recapitalized in the next year and a half? Like, can we do, it's a lot of money to not have been aware that it was coming on. So it seems like there's a need for some sort of study or analysis of all the software that's essential for the town and when it's coming due, so we don't get caught $200,000 surprised.
If I was town administrator for a day, I would not fund anything that wasn't on a plan if I had this problem. So if a department came to me and said, hey, I discovered this software that I need because it's out of life for 10 years, then I would say no.
I agree with that. Maybe the departments need to plan.
But
Yeah.
Well,
it's auditorium lighting, part 2,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The sequel.
yeah.
Right.
Oh gee, I need this thing and I need it right away. Well, all right.
Well, that's why we're working towards this capital plan, right?
Yes.
And I think we've made good strides.
I think we're doing well, but I think I absolutely echo their point, which is we gotta be tougher on the departments. Their job
Is to,
is to
right,
come bring that stuff early.
to
You
know
gotta
it's
spend
when
more
it's
time
coming.
thinking about it.
Yeah.
All right, we have other things tonight. This is really important, but unless there's anything else, I'd like to kind of wrap up the discussion.
All right, so I'm gonna put everything into OneDrive and share all the documents that were submitted to the Finance Committee.
That'd be great.
I'm gonna keep, Kelly and I are gonna keep control of the main spreadsheet, so you can work on drafts, and we'll just manage it for you. But that's the plan. Whatever else you need, let us know.
Thank you, Ryan.
Are you guys doing your marathon sessions?
Yeah, January 8th and 9th.
Right, that was awesome.
Great presentation.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so we'll close our meeting, and then we have another meeting upstairs. Follow us up. So,
Enjoy.
we can take a roll call to close.
You should be any.
Yeah, Mark, I agree.
Tatchu, aye?
Leah.
Oh, yeah. sorry. Lil and I.
Together, you know, move your meeting.
Victor and Heidi.
Liang, aye.
Schober guy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
See you guys.
It'll be fun.
The
All right.
numbers better.
David, your
a
light's on.
2-minute stretch break.
You want a stretch
Just to
break?
stand up.
All right.
Sorry.
Turn around a couple
We're jumping off the
times,
roof.
you know.
Okay. Yeah, whatever.
Flashlight.
This is the first half of the year.
The White House CC budget.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Make it less.
I think,
Exactly.
well, and I think it's always important, but I think this year in particular, it's also taking a multi-year.
I still need to know more about this.
There may be some decisions.
Help yourself.
Yeah, there are cookies up here.
They're Girl Scout cookies.
Given to me and.
Barney and I gave a
we went to the
presentation
Girl
to the Girl
Scout
Scouts.
meeting and talked about
And
what
that
it
might make
means to be
sense,
on the
but-
select board. I'm gonna have
We need,
some,
and
so.
one of the things I said is,
Please.
we need to model out your circuit breaker.
Help yourselves.
Is this what we want to do as a town?
Oh, absolutely.
Good.
I mean, I'm sure there's other examples of that,
Thanks, Barney.
where we have to look at.
Yeah. Hey,
the-
we
the
did a lot of work for
question,
them.
offsetting one-time
Answered
expenses.
a lot of
I'm good,
good
thank you.
questions.
Inspirational. All right.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good, I read.
Oh. David, are you coming back?
I'm just.
Oh, okay. Good.
I'm following him, following him to the water thing.
All right.
Pass this down to.
I think we're all set on it, yep.
Yeah, I signed it.
All right, moving on to our next item, which is the Council on Aging and Human Services Community Center discussion. So we met with them in open session on November 12th, and we had talked about, we'd listened to their thoughts on not only the community center, but some of their programmatic needs. I will start by saying that you all received, and I shared the email that Tony had sent. She said, asked the request that the discussion of the COHS space needs be postponed to a later meeting date. They'd like some advance notice and then being allowed to discuss among themselves. And she had a point of clarification to request the appointment of a committee to explore the creation of the community center within a 10-year. I think that was a request of us. But if there are, my opinion is generally, I had hoped that we could just have a discussion and reflect on what we heard from the Council on Aging and Human Services. But if there's anyone on the board that would prefer to go in a different direction, I'm happy to entertain that. In your packet, I had put together just kind of a couple of questions to think about. And I think, you know, this comes up in the context of we're trying to put all these pieces together for budgetary needs as well as community needs. I mean, we did a master plan, and we certainly have the Carlisle community and, you know, caring community, and seniors are an important part of our community. I mean, we're all in this together, but we need to kind of put these pieces together, and I just thought it would be helpful to, you know, kind of reflect on that and see where the select board is on that discussion. To that end, I had a memo in there. Gotta pull it up here. And I sent that to everyone. Does the select board support the proposed community center? And if yes, you know, how would we like to move it forward? And if no, you know, are there other ways to meet this in the COAHS's and the town space needs? So, I don't know, Barney, you're a liaison there. I'm kind of put you on the
Put me
spot.
on that
And
spot.
yeah, why don't you, you know, kick off your thoughts on this, on what we've heard?
Well, I know that the COAHS working group, you know, has put a huge amount of time into looking both at the past history and then trying to, you know, analyze what kind of programs you want to offer going forward. And and also describing some of the issues right now in terms of space. And I think those are very real concerns. For me, thinking in the context of the town's overall budget and what we're looking at, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years, I'm not ready at this point to support or to signal that we are definitely going to move toward building a community center in town. And one reason for that is I totally support the idea of it being a community center as opposed to a center just for seniors. And, you know, I understand that for you all, you were saying very clearly in the presentation a couple of weeks ago that you didn't feel that you could be the group to work with other constituencies in town and really determine who else would really support the idea of a community center and could actually specifically provide information about how they might use a community center. And so I think that is a key component for me, which is seeing if there is strong support for a community center from other elements of our town. And I think when I think about other projects that have moved forward, it's typically been you know, a group that is most interested in making it happen, and they are out organizing to build a constituency of people broader than their own kind of self-interest group to support the town making this investment. So I'm in this demographic, and I can certainly see myself, you know, in 5 years or so, or 10 years, wanting to participate in COA activities. So it's not that I don't see the need for it. And also, from the information you provided us with, I mean, it is clear that it's a growing constituency here in our town. I think, and I've talked about this before, I'd like to see, while it's not the perfect solution, I'd like to see us figure out a way to provide some additional space for some of the program needs, or to address some of the space needs with our existing town spaces. And again, I fully recognize it's not ideal. And when you described, you know, this program is located here and this one's located here, and keeping track of all of that, you know, I recognize it's not ideal. But I think for a town with our financial future, at least near term, over the next 10 years, I don't think it would be responsible for me personally, I don't think it'd be responsible of us as a select board to, in a sense, endorse the idea of a community center as a new building here in town. I just don't think it would be responsible yet.
Are there other, I'd love to hear comments on the select board.
Well.
Come on, Kate.
Yeah,
You're-
well, you know, I'm the one that wrote a screed about how I thought,
It's a good word, Kate.
it would be nice to see some efforts to bring program together, you know, in our available spaces that we have as well. So I guess, although I maybe don't feel as strongly as you do, Barney, I think I'd like to see some efforts, you know, what can be done before we do because I'm not convinced we've really outgrown all of our spaces yet. And I hate to add more spaces that need to be heated and staffed, especially I mean, it's not just the space, you know, you have to staff this thing now. Unless-
And maintain
and maintain it. So I'd like to see our facilities fully, you know, really fully used. I mean, this town hall certainly is, but I think we have other spaces that could be used as well.
I agree. I think, so one thought and one question. We, you know, when we were in the beginning thinking about the police station renovation and the potential fire station, we talked about how we could make the town center more cohesive. And
Yeah.
if we're gonna use spaces that are not actually in this building, we also need to address the mobility of the constituency, especially the senior constituency, which is parking and walking. And I think, again, you know, in sort of the virtual community center that Kate had proposed a year or so ago, maybe 2 now, some creativity around better parking, better walking in this little area would be useful. I mean, so that's the comment. The question is the churches, and maybe it's something we should explore more fully with town council. I know a gentleman who's actually in the audience right now was very vocal about sort of church and state separation when it came to quid pro quo of plowing versus using. But really, what can we do if the churches have good spaces and they're not occupied all the time? What legally can we formalize with them to take advantage of that, and what can we offer them? You know, I mean, that's another thing I think worth exploring about. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Scott?
I mean, since I've been on the select board, most of our time has been spent trying to grasp and prioritize the needs of our public safety buildings and our DPW. And I think the concept of a community center is something, of course, we all support. The question is prioritization, and we're struggling with that just among our public safety buildings, trying to layer in a community center. Where would that fall in the prioritization? I think it's after some of the public safety things we're looking at. It's after DPW. I haven't been as close to the work that's been done to date. I don't know what other communities have done in terms of what the cost of these community centers are, what the financing of these community centers are. Is public-private, is that an option that we've looked at? It strikes me as the type of thing that the community has gotten behind, initiatives like the castle, like Gleason. Is this something that could be funded in a different way? You may have looked at that. It may not be feasible, but it's something that seems like it has potential to at least offset some of the ask. And so looking at that might make the project a little more financially feasible for the town. I don't know what's been done to this point to look at that part, but in terms of adding another building project first we have to tackle police and fire, and then shortly after is DPW. And I just think that's going to consume us financially and from an operations standpoint, at least for the next, how many years? 6, 7, 8.
Beyond your tenure.
Yeah. Yeah. But, getting creative about it in terms of the financing, grants, I don't know what's out there. I don't know what these things cost. It's probably way more than I think it is. But is this something that could be funded outside of the town budget? Yes.
In all of our documents, we have specified
Yep.
that we feel that we would be able to get a fair number of grants
Yep.
and do some private fundraising. So
Right.
we do not
Right.
ever expect the town to pick up the full bill.
Right.
But if we never get on your priority list, because this is the 3rd time we've come through in the last 15, 20 years. If we're
Yeah.
never on your priority list, we don't have a chance anyhow. The master plan lists this 63 times. The open space, I think it was 20-something.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing, you know, just on the master plan, which I put a lot of hours into myself, there were no costs associated with any of those recommendations. And that's the part I think that we're trying to figure out now is, as Scott's saying, what are the priorities right now, and over the next 5 years? We've laid out, we know that there are two, the police department and the fire department. And it's not that we want to pit people against each other, but,
But if we don't get on your list ever, we may as well just drop out of the race.
Well, there's not, I would say, you're on our list because we're talking to you frequently about it. I think in the being on the list part is also a pretty honest assessment of alternatives that don't involve a new building, which is what you're hearing from this side. Let me ask one question, just because what you guys said. Does CPA have a role in this kind of a project?
only if it's outside.
Outside meaning out in the air?
CPA can't fund.
You can't fund a building.
Building. Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
My sense is from this discussion that we're, as a board, kind of saying that it's not a priority for us as a board to put on a capital plan at this point. Barney brought up a good point, though, about building community support, and that entails, getting building constituencies. And I know there's a real desire to have us be that board that says we're going to support this, but I just think that based on this discussion, there doesn't seem to be the near-term support for this at this time, and so I think it's helpful to kind of get that out there in the public. But Jerry, I can see you want to speak, so please.
I think thinking of this as a request for a building is the wrong way to look at it. I think this is a planning issue, and there are short-term needs and there are long-term needs, and we're never going to be able to address any of them unless we start looking at the problems and plan for it. And so the question that I would have with the select board is, how does the town go about addressing those planning needs? Scott raised good questions. Can it be funded in other ways? Yes, probably, but we need to look at those. So who's going to do that looking? Is it the COA? Is it the select board? Is it some other committee? I think we need to go about planning for this in some organized way. And I think that takes support from the select board, at least in acknowledging the fact that this is something the town ought to be looking at. And it takes support from the constituent communities, the COA-HS being a large part of that, but other ones also.
So, go ahead. Just 3 comments on what Jerry said. So number one, yes, but it does take, like what you're hearing from us is go out there and get some other groups, like build the momentum to make that part happen. That's number one. Number two, the playground and I believe the library were like really focused efforts by certain individuals who are completely committed to the public-private partnership. And it takes somebody, you gotta find somebody like that. That's not really our job. That's somebody coming and saying, hey, I'm gonna do this. Prior to that, it was Louis Salemi with the regional building. I mean, somebody who was really dynamic who said, I'm gonna go out there and get some funding. The third thing is, well, I forget the third thing. The third thing, actually the most important thing, I'm sorry, is going back to what Tim Holt said many years ago, which is, and this is for us, what really are our priorities? Clearly, public safety is a priority. We've got to keep our citizens safe. Clearly, education is a priority. We have to educate our children. And we've got to do a few other things like dump trash and pay our bills and blah, blah, blah. Beyond that, and we've decided, and Master Plan helps us, open space and some other things. We really need to put those other things into context. And so we do owe that piece, I think.
Right. And I think that the using spaces that we have, at least in the short term, is if there are unmet needs for facilities, that's a great place to start for that. Did you have anything else? We are
Carol.
gonna wrap up, but Carol?
I just
Yeah.
wanted to make a comment that kind of builds on what Verna said. If there is some sort of level of official sanction that, yes, we are moving towards this, even though it's gonna be a long process or whatever, you could start fundraising. That's one thing that we can't do right now, is we can't do any fundraising. And I know that there's seniors, I talk to them all the time, who are really behind this, who might leave like a legacy gift or something, and, you know, it takes time sometimes to collect funds for such a project, so
Yep.
just something to consider.
Sure. Well, things like the Beatty Center, who had a, Beatty is a, a donor who didn't even have a land, didn't have the thing, but just said, I really wanna have this happen, and that, if you can find that,
Yeah.
again, it will springboard and I think grow organically. But I don't think at this time, based on what I've heard tonight from the select board, that you're getting that kind of support from the select board on this community center.
But I guess I'll say for myself,
Yeah.
though, I'm very committed to looking at alternatives for coming up with ways to provide more space for the COA, and it will not, as I said before, it won't be the ideal, right, where you have everything in one building, but, the notion of working with a church to figure out, is there space there that we could actually use on a regular basis for COAHS activities? Or are there other options for spaces that we already have, that the town already has, but that are not utilized fully? That we can figure out a way to if they need, renovations, for example, the Highland Building, right? If there's some way to have a piece of that be designated space for the COAHS, it's gonna be cheaper than trying to pay for a brand-new building.
Not necessarily.
Well, in general, renovating an existing structure is less expensive, and I know you've been inside, as have I, but I'm just saying, we need to explore those options, and I really think that that's a smart way to go over the next, 4 or 5 years, to figure out, are there some alternatives, using the space at Benfield, which is completely underutilized. I know there are objections, you all have gone through a lot of this yourselves, but is it all or nothing for the COAHS, or can we help you figure out some ways to use what we already have to meet some of your needs?
Right. Okay, we do have to move on. I'll take
Can
one.
I say that?
Let
I'm
Mary
waiting.
choose.
Okay.
Mary Cheever, 74 Carroll Drive.
Mhm.
Okay. Barney, when I listen to you, it sounds like you're saying either or, and what we're saying is both. The needs, I've studied a little bit of some of our abutting towns that are putting in senior centers as we speak, okay? It's a 10-year process. The select board gives a charge. The committees, like members of FinCom and RecCom and all those, different groups, you're asking us to go off and get all those people. I think there will be more power behind it. And we're talking 10 years, like I said, and Jerry was saying, let's get on the agenda for something that's 10 years out. In the meantime, yes, let's get all these other buildings, because we have needs between now and 10 years from now. So it's not an either or, but I'm hearing that. I think it's parallel, and I think it would be much more powerful if we had a charge from the select people. We could go off and do the fundraising, because the town is behind this. Get a committee together that's our group, and FinCom, and all the other groups, and find out what all the needs are, because it is a community center. It's not a senior center, even though, maybe you see a lot of seniors there, but it's gonna be one of these buildings where if you build it, they'll come,
Wing.
kind of thing.
Ryan, there's some people in the waiting room.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, I do want to move on here because we have another important appointment tonight that we have to, but I think it was important to have this discussion.
Yeah.
All
It's
right.
fair to take it up. I mean, it's
Yeah.
something we should be.
I
Not
just think it's
totally.
really, it's, you know, they're asking the board for the board's view, and I think the board now has, the five of us have weighed in and given our opinion. The board will change over time. Maybe there'll be, you know, in the future boards or whatever, there'll be different level of support. But other than that, I think going forward and gating community support as best you can. David gave some examples of other groups that have done that. I do want to move on though, because we have an employee appointment that is waiting in the room. So, would you like to kick this off? Thank you.
Yes, so as you know, the town has transitioned to appointed town clerk. So we talked as a board about what type of process we want to run and what type of person we'd like to see fill that role. So tonight, we are presenting Ashley Cody to you as a candidate for the town clerk position. And so she doesn't have to brag about herself, I will. So Ashley has 7 years' experience in town clerk's office, most recently as the assistant town clerk in the town of Bedford. I can't say how highly recommended she is, and also has a very clear vision for what she wants to do in the role and also to serve in the community. So I'm hoping Ashley can introduce herself to the board. The board can ask some questions, and we are recommending that she be appointed tonight as the first full appointed town clerk in Carlisle's history.
I just want to jump in and say I was privileged to be on the selection committee, and I just have to say the cream did rise to the top.
And I was
Thank
on
you so
that.
much.
Yeah. I was
Thank
on
you for
that.
having me tonight. It's a pleasure, and thank you for your kind words about me. I appreciate it.
Great. Are there questions?
So just going into a general introduction about myself. My name's Ashley, and I was serving as assistant town clerk in Bedford. Just generally speaking, I live in Massachusetts, born and raised in Massachusetts, live in Methuen with my husband. And, we generally love Massachusetts and spend a lot of time outdoors, and have been in Carlisle and Lexington and Bedford walking the trails. And we're just really excited to live here, and I'm really excited to serve in one of our municipalities.
Great. Are there questions by the board?
Welcome.
Kate, anything
Well-
you wanted to say about the selection or how you've already said it.
I think I said it.
You said it. I said
Well,
it.
and we had a good pool of applicants.
Yes.
And then the selection committee went through independently. We all, did some rankings and chose to interview 3 people.
We had a rigorous process.
Yes, we did. So, and it was a unanimous choice by the selection committee.
Maybe if you could take a minute and just tell us about what you think coming in and what you may want to try to accomplish while you're our first appointed town clerk.
Absolutely. So I think initially I'll want to take a look at, of course, familiarizing myself with the bylaws of the town, familiarizing myself with the kind of time frame on different issues, getting a calendar of events ready for deadlines related to, the town election, the caucus, getting the census ready will be the first priority, I think, but also just getting a kind of a general feel for the town and its needs, getting to know all of my coworkers and staff and what their, needs are and, goals are, and working with them on that. So yeah, I'm really excited to just get a feel for the priorities and the needs of the town and to just dig in.
I want to mention that she's also an archivist. She did a lot of her education and something that we can use in this town.
For sure.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to dig in and get the records in order.
Careful.
Great.
So assuming the board appoints Ashley tonight, which it seems likely to do, Ashley would be starting this month. We've also asked Rosemary to stay on for a couple weeks. You all know Rosemary, she's done a great job to help with the transition. We have full confidence that Ashley knows how to do the job. It's the Carlisle stuff that she needs to be caught up to speed on. And then Rosemary has tentatively agreed to help us with some of that archiving, so taking advantage of her skills and Ashley's skills while she's getting transitioned is part of the plan. So very excited to get going.
Wow,
Great. Fantastic. Do I hear a
Should I make
motion?
a-
Yeah, if you'd like to.
I'll move that we appoint Ashley, do you say it Cote or Cote?
Cody.
Cody, Ashley Cody, to the position of town clerk, effective December 16th, 2024.
I'd like to second that.
Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None.
All right, welcome.
All right,
Great.
congratulations.
We're
And
thrilled to
Thank
December-
you very much.
December 16th is next week.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo!
It's
Coming up fast.
Good.
Great. Well, thank you for coming on tonight. We appreciate your
Yes.
time.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be getting started. Thank you.
Great.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Right.
See you soon.
Yep.
Have a good one. Thank
you.
you.
Okay, ATM.
All right, moving along to annual town meeting discussion. We need to vote to set the date of the town meeting.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, let's hear it.
What, we have, did we
Are
end
we
up
gonna
with
do it
two?
on a Sunday?
Right, that's,
We have-
what did your group end up, you said you were certainly looking at
Yes.
it, are you?
Well,
or
so,
did you-
yeah, let me recap just quickly. Well, first of all, I should say, I did not post this as a joint meeting. I think, I don't see the whole gallery here, but I believe Wayne is on. I believe Don Drinkwater's on. Do you have the full gallery?
We have Nancy as well.
And Nancy's on. So, is there a way to show the whole, and I don't know if Mark went over to FinCom, so he's gone. So I think we're under a quorum, so people can chime in, because Wayne is actually not an official member, and he's welcome. So anyone from the town committee who is willing, who wants to speak, can do so, I believe.
Well, regardless, they
But,
could,
yeah.
anybody can chime in.
They can chime in.
We're not deliberating.
Right. We're not
We're just
deliberating, but,
reporting, right?
So, I'll remind us that, I think it was at the last meeting, trying to lose track here. Prior to the last meeting, I sent a note to Travis that outlined where we had come as a committee. We had sort of ended the data gathering phase, and we reached the conclusion that these are some things we want to try. I believe, if my timeline is correct, we had our last select board meeting, and we kind of informally agreed that that was the direction the select board wanted to go. We had our regular town meeting study committee meeting, and the consensus was, that's great, but we have to do a little more work before we're really ready to kind of present everything. And the kind of work that we expect to engage on starting next week is to look at, like, there were a lot of recommendations. I just gave you the very highlights, but there were a lot of recommendations, and we want to kind of codify them and figure out which ones we really want to try and give you sort of a whole package. So we'll do that in separate, doesn't need to be, we'll come back another time with that. I think the main thing, though, that came out of our process, which I did articulate last time, was, first of all, set the date, and if it's going to be a Sunday, and if we're going to make an event, then there's logistics we have to talk about, and whose responsibility. So that's one thing to touch on. And the second thing, which is very important to Wayne, is put a fence around the warrant process so that we can be done with it early and really move into socializing and
Which
community.
we have done.
We've done.
We
We
set
kinda
up
did that.
the February 11th deadline.
Right, so we've done that part, so I guess that part's done. So there we are.
Took your recommendation and
Yeah,
acted on it.
right, boom, boom, boom. So,
Yeah, we'll have to do the Sunday thing.
yep.
I mean,
I don't know, does Wayne or Nancy, do anything you want to add to that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wayne?
just the one thing I would add, in our discussions with other towns, and the experience on weekend meetings, it's a little bit hard to interview and talk to people because some towns went to weekends as Carlisle did during the pandemic in order to have outside meetings. And so you sort of have to go back to 2019 and previous to sort of understand what a more steady state condition would be. The town that has most successfully done weekend meetings seems to be Lincoln, which historically has theirs in late March. What I had heard in talking with some other towns is some other towns experimented. They were weeknights and then moved to weekends, and people complain no matter what you do.
No matter what, right?
Some towns reported not much of an impact. In a discussion with our town council, Tom Harrington, he said that in his observation and experience over the years, that the earlier you do it in the spring, the more successful a weekend meeting can be, because it is less likely to conflict with sports. So at our the last meeting of the committee heard that and said, okay, that's, certainly sounds plausible. But if we're going to start, the consensus of the committee was, if we're going to start, let's recommend that we start. And if we find that, May 5th has too many sports conflicts and so forth, then the following year or the next meeting, we can consider, do we move the entire schedule back so that it's, say, an early April weekend meeting? But obviously that affects the entire calendar. It was too late to recommend that you move up town meeting for a month. So that's why the committee heard Tom's cautionary note, nonetheless suggested, Carlisle, let's go ahead, let's give it a try.
Yeah, I would say two things on that. One is, as a parent of kids who've been playing sports forever, and many of you have been there, there's not much going on generally on a Sunday afternoon, number one. Number two, in this case, particularly as we try to overlay activities for children, because we discovered that babysitting on a weeknight is not answering the mail, I think it's very important to have nice weather.
Yeah.
And take advantage of our great castle. If it's inclement, we can contingency have the gym, but to say March, no, that's not going to do it. So I personally am excited that we can have a nice Sunday in May and we can have an event.
Yeah.
Was there any preference between the two dates that were?
We didn't express it.
But it's May 4th or May 18th.
Well, I would say where Tom is going, where Tom Harrington was going. Earlier is better. Like, the longer you go into May, now you're really starting to get into stuff. So my personal preference only would be May 4th. Plus, I love the Star Wars. But really, no, I don't think that's.
Okay, I've just asked.
And did we determine that both the 4th and the 18th, the school auditorium is available?
We reserved all of it. We have the school reserved.
Locked down, okay.
Yes, okay.
Okay. Is there
The
anything else?
the 11th,
Yeah, go
you
ahead.
wouldn't want to do it at the 11th because that's Mother's Day.
Right, yeah, that's not.
So-
No, we only reserved those two.
Those two, 'cause the
Those two,
follow-
Kate, that
Right.
we're talking
And the
about.
last one in May is Memorial Day weekend. So
No, I think-
those are our two options.
Yeah, so I personally like the
18th.
fourth. But
Oh,
the other
18th,
thing
that's
Travis
it,
says,
yeah.
I alluded to in the beginning, and we don't have to do it tonight, but I think as we sift through this now, we pivot, as Brian, who's really good with phrasing, by the way, said, we're moving to operationalizing this, right? So operationalizing the meeting now pivots to what should the TMSC do? What does the daytime government want to take on? What do we want? I mean, there's a whole communication plan. We already kind of talked about that. We're going to try to work with the proposers. But in planning a meeting, having events, there's logistical things. And I don't want to speak for the daytime government, but there is work to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just want to leave that out.
Okay. Any further?
Anybody else?
Well,
Don?
I just,
No,
oh,
go
I
ahead.
want to see if anyone else.
Well, I just want to
Don?
Don is the other member who's on, although if Don wants to say anything, he can raise his hand.
Okay.
No, I really don't have anything to add to it, David. I think you've expressed our thoughts very accurately.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Marty?
I was just gonna say, given what we're gonna discuss in a little bit about the RFQ and the timing for the fire station, if we think there's a chance that that could be ready, that work could get done in time for spring town meeting, I would just go with the
The later one,
18th
yeah.
rather than the 4th to give 2 more weeks to
That's
that.
a fair
But,
statement.
when we talk about that, I don't know if you know something new, Ryan, or, because I noticed in the RFQ, you know, if you look at the timing at the end, they still say town meeting is June 2025. So,
That's a fair point.
It's tight.
yeah. But I guess to give them as much time as possible, and not so they're prepared to say right now, no, we can't.
To give an answer, if it was gonna happen, it would likely need to be the 18th, but I'm not sure that it has enough of a chance for me to recommend that you move the meeting because of it. I'm not sure that 2 weeks does it.
And it's, let me ask this, I think it's looking more likely that we'll have a fall town meeting, because I'm not sure planning board's gonna make the May
MBTA,
deadline,
yeah.
deadline for the MBTA, and I know they're still gonna, well, I don't know, but I think they might still wanna do an ADU one in the spring, but I'm not sure. But anyway,
Spring,
so.
this spring?
With the,
This spring or spring?
this spring. So, but I'm wondering if, because the, normally we don't, you know, wanna do financial things, would we not do the fire station then, or would we go ahead and do it anyway?
Well, maybe we should settle on the date, I mean, does it,
Well, maybe you don't vote
does
right
2
now.
weeks make a
We
difference?
can vote at the end of the meeting, why don't we go to?
Can we wait, I hate to have, you have a whole committee here, or 3
We don't,
members,
it
so
doesn't
matter.
affect,
Okay.
it doesn't affect
So-
what we do.
So could we wait and then vote it after we talk on the, talk?
Oh, tonight?
Tonight, is that what you're
Yeah,
suggesting?
yeah, that's what I'm suggesting, right.
Just to
We
see
come
if
back
that.
We don't
to it
need, we
tonight
don't need to
after.
take the vote this minute, if we, let's talk about the other one.
But
If-
and then
to
come
see if
back
it
and
has
set
an
a date
impact, and then
tonight.
come back and
Yeah,
vote on it
okay.
tonight.
Okay.
But I
But
do think
what
it's
about-
important we set a date.
We will set a
Yeah.
date tonight, but I just think,
Okay.
why don't we
Yeah.
postpone it and have our discussion?
Well, I guess I'd like to clarify that, though, it sounds like we've making a decision to do it on a Sunday.
I think so.
Okay.
I'm supportive
I'm
of that.
totally
It sounds like
supportive.
you
I'm
are.
excited
Barney,
about it.
What do you
Yeah,
think?
I'd like to try it.
Yeah,
I
it
think
seems
we
like
should try
everyone,
it.
yeah,
And we're
that's
committed
the
to May?
recommendation. I think it's a
Yeah.
positive recommendation.
Right, and I mean, listen,
Yeah.
it's,
So
it's,
it's May.
June 1st or June.
Why we're, are we committed to May?
I,
Here's my
question.
I personally don't think we should wait for June.
If the fire station is
Yeah.
gonna be a big topic, if we push it to fall, we're gonna have to bake that into the
Yeah.
budget story
Yeah.
in this town. I mean, it's gonna take a little extra work, but I don't think we would wanna not bring it up in spring and then say, oh, fall, here, we can vote on it.
I would say this, let me
Yeah.
recommend, if at the end of our fire station decision, we think we really wanna make a go of doing it, I would actually, I would suggest we actually don't pick the date tonight. We go back to, the two people who aren't on, Deepa and Brian, are much more in touch with the parents. We're doing a lot of that for the parents. I would wanna hear from that constituent group how June is.
Okay.
Weekends in June.
The only challenge we have is timing, because we're now
We're
not
not
gonna
gonna meet
meet
again.
till January.
I know, but you've already framed a warrant. Where does it pace? If you're going out to June, what I mean to say is if you're really considering
Yeah.
the 18th of May, that's 2 weeks later than today, the
Yeah.
4th, right? And even into June, I think it probably isn't, it's okay to wait. But really the thing I'm trying to say, and maybe, I don't know how to, I just feel at a loss because one of the drivers is giving the biggest, the low-hanging fruit of participation are parents who say, I would love to go to town meeting,
Right.
but these reasons.
Right.
And they seem to be okay with a Sunday. But when you get into the June Sundays, you know, are they going to their beach house?
Right.
Or graduation.
May, I think, is okay. I think both sides of May are
I
okay.
would
Yeah.
tend to agree, if I were, but I think that the question is, do we do the beginning of May or the end
Yeah,
of May?
no,
It sounds
now
like-
I'm,
and-
Barney has convinced me that the end of
Right.
May might be the right answer. The
Okay,
18th,
but
not.
do we need to wait on that
No,
decision?
if we decide it's that, but I'm saying if you think really June,
I'm not thinking
Okay,
June.
that's all I'm
I
saying.
think that's.
I'm warming up to May the 18th. I'd love to hear, does anybody else on the committee want to weigh in on that?
This isn't deliberation.
I know, well, they can they can weigh an opinion, we're not.
To us.
I think May 18th is good. I like that day. Either way would be fine.
Yeah.
But when we think about the weather, we're gonna be in a little better weather on the 18th than we are gonna be on the 5th or the 6th, the earlier days.
Possibly.
Yeah, okay.
I have a video of May 18th as about 20 years ago where it snowed, so.
Sure.
Well, there's the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
Okay.
kids were getting married June 1st, and I was a
Alright.
little concerned.
All right, I'm cool.
And so it goes the 18th, and then we're contemplating as one event.
One
day,
event.
And do we have a backup in the event that it was to
Inclement
run?
weather? Or,
No,
Yes,
just
we
for
go to that.
timing and
Oh.
everything else.
well, then I guess.
Or
Monday
is
night?
it, I don't know, is it
I
the
mean,
select
how do you
board
do it
for
now?
everything?
What happens now when you pick a date of town meeting on a Monday?
Wayne's on, he can chime in.
Do you need a backup date?
Mean for a
That
second
would be
night, for a
prudent.
second meeting?
Oh, I see, for a second night. That's
You-
Yeah,
For a
that-
second
if
night.
you don't get everything done.
You've got someone at the table with some military planning experience, probably deeper than mine. I suspect he might agree that having a backup plan is a good idea. But yeah, I mean, you just never know, a pipe breaks or something weird happens or.
Right, so Wayne, what do we do now?
It goes long. Well, normally what we do, the plan is that if it, we always make sure that we're reserving at least one more night. So if it's a Monday night meeting,
I see.
we're sure that we've scheduled for 2. And, the time 5 or 6 years ago when we knew we might be at risk of possibly going over to 3, we at least knew whether the school was available.
So,
Wayne,
so
your faith in Ryan's military planning is true. He's already reserved Monday night, so
Okay.
That answers
The
the
following
question.
Monday, right, the day after, right.
The day, but timing wise, we're trying to fit it into one day.
Yes.
is the-
I think, I think.
Yes, I
one of
think timing-wise, the idea is one day.
Okay.
So,
And what's
And,
the,
and just to answer, I forget whether it was Barney or Kate's earlier comment, there's no prohibition at all on bringing a financial article to a special town meeting in the fall. The concept is simply the required financial stuff must happen in the spring.
Okay,
Anything else can happen in the fall.
okay.
So special projects can go in the
let me
fall.
just address.
And then the last observation I would make is if you recall what happened with the police station where, you had estimate, the estimate came in, like the afternoon before the last regularly scheduled select board meeting before the meeting, and the number was higher. And the select board was quite pinched in trying to figure out what to do. So, whether it's moving it to May 18th or saying we're just going to do it at a special town meeting in the fall, make sure that you give yourselves adequate time so that you don't, sorry for the pun, get caught in a fire drill at the last minute.
okay, thank you.
Which is good for all things. I
My
just
question
want-
was timing of.
Yeah, so I think one of the nice features to me of the weekend meeting.
Yep.
Well, let me say, the weekday meeting is constrained. You really can't start before 7, maybe 6:30.
Right.
And then you get the back end, nobody wants to be there after 10 or 10:30. In the Sunday, you could say, all right, we want to be done by 7, let's say, picking that day. And based on our agenda, we can back the start time.
Do we have to set that?
I don't think so. So,
Just the day?
yeah, I think if we, in my opinion, I won't say statutorily, but if we wait, because the warrant's open, we wait to see what we have.
Yep.
We kind of figure out, based on our experience, how many hours that should take. And we back into 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3, I think we have a lot more flexibility that way to kind of tailor the length of the meeting to the agenda. because we're not constrained at both ends. We can say, we don't wanna be later than, say, 7, and that's, cause the kids go home or whatever. But the other side, and it's light, that's another reason to have it later, it's light longer, but
Right.
kids are gonna wanna.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so we've kind of had this discussion.
Great.
Scott, did you have
Good.
anything to add? You were quiet. It sounded like the 18th
I'm
was
good with
now
that.
kind of
Yeah, my-
coalescing.
Trying to put it in my
My only
calendar.
concern is that if we don't have the fire station information, we're presenting a budget and capital projects in May, we're gonna have to account for the fire. I mean, I know we can do stuff in the fall, and we're allowable to do that, but everyone's making budget decisions and prioritizations and trade-offs in May, and so we're gonna have to figure out how to account for that if we don't have that
Right.
information.
Right.
So you have to reserve budget information for something you don't know how much it's gonna cost, now you can't do that, right?
No, but I think you have to put it into the storyline as you.
Right, is a capital project.
Right, but I took, and this is really not part of the town meeting thing, this is more of the, now on the first station, but if you don't make budget room for it, you just say notionally it's gonna cost X to do this, what happens in the fall? Where do you find, that's the problem, like, where do you find the money?
If it's over what you.
Well, this is being borrowed.
If it's
so-
even not over, you can't even put you can't put a number unless you, I guess you could, you can put an estimate number, not to exceed, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, why don't we move forward here, and
Okay.
I suggest if we take a vote on
Yeah.
this. Sure.
How about I'll move to set the date of the 2025 annual town meeting for Sunday, May 18th.
Right. A second.
Great. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Oh, maybe, did you?
No, it's not on that particularly. I have a follow-up question after the
Okay,
vote.
great. So, voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. All right, it's gonna be the 18th.
I have a question just for us and also for Ryan. The event part of this, not the town meeting part, but the outdoor event part. How do we think that's gonna get organized? And Ryan, do you see that there are town staff or a staff person available to help with that? Or are we thinking we recruit some folks that, like the idea of putting together some sort of an afternoon event, probably some school parents or whatever. Any thoughts on how we see that getting put together?
I think it would be helpful to have a super volunteer supported by staff.
Yeah.
So someone who put together the idea and then we execute it would be ideal.
So I will say that, as I mentioned earlier, we are gonna spend a session or two in our next set of meetings to cull through all the recommendations. We'll include this. We'll get them categorized in terms of things we wanna do and what it takes to do them. And we'll come back, having labored, Gretchen can attest to my incompetence, labored as a chair and doing my own minutes and organizing meetings. It's too much for me personally. But we do have a high energy group, but it would be really great if there was a staff resource that we could say, here, please do this, do this. Right now I go and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, not my job. And then I go back and I do it and I'm told I do it wrong. And it's very inefficient for me right now to organize. I'm just not like organizing.
It would be great to tap one of the parent groups,
Yeah,
maybe
I
the
was thinking
PTO
deep
or
it.
whomever that.
Yeah, we'll try that. We'll
Ask
try
her
that.
first.
They'll know what's
Right.
best for their
For their
constituents.
kids,
And
right.
if they're involved, it might help.
Yeah, it would help.
decide.
Right. If it's a lead, I think go to a group that historically doesn't attend and ask them to lead might be
Well,
difficult, but yeah. I'm just saying that there's things to do that if the daytime government could make
yeah.
a resource available, it would be helpful. That's
Okay, moving along, we did want, I have before you do that, Scott, the town administrator bylaw, if you saw it in your packet, I ran it by town council, they added one amendment in there, which was relatively minor, but added superintendent in there because
Yeah.
the superintendent does
I
have.
thought that was a good idea.
So if the board is in agreement, I think I'd like to propose this as a warrant article, and I'd like to then have each member of the board float it to your various committees, liaison, and on certain ones, like I think
The elected
The
boards.
elected boards,
Boards,
the
yeah.
elected boards, I think, I'd be happy to go with you. And what I was hoping is maybe you could reach out to the chairs directly, say that you'd like to, have a few minutes at least at an upcoming meeting of theirs to just present it, and they could share it in whatever package they have ahead of time. And then, you make an appearance there and you just take, 5 minutes to talk about it and, see if there's any comments. I think what I would be looking for, and I hope the board would look for, is if there's something we missed, if there was something that we didn't think about, that would be helpful in that discussion. But I think we have to socialize.
Start, yeah.
So if there's a motion to, put this forward, I think I need a motion, rather to, no, Kate,
No, okay, well, I mean, I
A
don't.
motion to put a warrant article forward?
You don't have to, or just to support it
I
at
think,
this
I
point?
think we all support this, right?
Well, then we should.
And
vote.
I would rather, I'd rather not have a motion to put it on the warrant until we
Good
have
thinking.
had
Yeah,
the
until we've had
feedback,
inputs.
because
Input, yeah.
it's no.
So we're socializing it as what we.
This is what we've supported right now. Can
Right.
you give us any feedback?
Okay, I think that's a good. I
Okay,
think that's-
so, seeing that, I will send around the final, which just
Yep.
takes out the red copy of that.
Well, that'll also be a good reminder to go do our homework.
Okay, well, I'm
Yeah.
gonna send that while we're talking, so. All right, good, all right, moving along. So ARPA.
There you go, pass that down. Updated. So, this will be the final ARPA set of motions, and there's 4 of them. Let me just walk you through what these are. Motion 1 is a list of budget adjustments just to free up some money that we know is gonna be available and move some money around. This is all at the request of the project owners. So Route to Sustainability has an extra $85 that we can put back to unallocated.
All right.
The COAHS requested that we move $400 from online mental health counseling to nutrition support, just to ensure that everything is paid out by December 31st. And then he just walked out. But Town Hall Records Management, there's excess funds in the records management for just based on what can be accomplished. Ryan had been looking into using that to fund some additional reconfiguration costs. And so we would be transferring the excess funds from records management to reconfiguration with an asterisk, and that is that he would have to get that money obligated by December 31st, which means he needs a contract.
And he feels he can do that?
He's not sure, but that's where the next motions come in.
Okay.
So motion 1 makes these budget adjustments.
Yeah.
Motion 2 would allocate all the remaining available funds to the Carlisle Owners Project,
Yep.
which is in the back, which would go towards the OPMs for the various buildings. Motion 3 would say and I ran these by Kelly, any previously approved ARPA funds that are not obligated prior to the deadline would be automatically transferred into the OPM project. So if Ryan is not able to get those funds obligated by the 31st, we would automatically move the funds over to OPM, so we wouldn't lose them. And then motion 4 would allow us, there's a provision now that if you have funds that are obligated, but for whatever reason after the deadline you don't need them, so say you entered into a contract, you get some money back, you can move those to another project.
You can do, okay.
So this would basically take anything that comes back, we're not
Sweep it up,
expecting,
put it in
and
the OPM.
put it in the OPM.
So is there a reason why motion 2's 146,000 doesn't agree with?
Yeah, it's the $85 from the Route to Sustainability event. If we approve motion 1, we have another $85 in
Okay,
it.
okay,
So-
great, thank you.
And are you good, Ryan, are you good with the moving the 20,000 over to reconfiguration? And if you can't get a contract signed, it would go to the OPM project.
Yep.
Okay? Yep.
Yeah, awesome.
So you want some motions to be put out there?
Yep. And I think, motion, you could probably
You
just,
should say,
Almost.
okay, I move, motion 1 as, presented in the select board meeting December 10th, 2024, ARPA motions memo.
Second.
I'm sorry, that was my bad.
Any
Any further
discussion?
discussion?
Where were you?
You're sending us our homework.
I am, I'm sending you your homework.
I'm going too
I got
fast
busted.
for you.
No, I got busted, you were. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed.
All
You
right.
just agreed to raise our
I
salaries.
know, I didn't, right, you have to double it. Right.
100%, yes. I move motion 2 as presented in the select board meeting, December 10th, 2024, ARPA motions memo.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right,
I move motion 3 as presented in the select board meeting, December 10th, 2024, ARPA motions memo.
Second.
any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And motion 4 as presented in the select board meeting, December 10th, 2024, ARPA motions memo. Say that 5 times real fast.
Second.
Second, well, any further? None. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed.
All right, folks.
Those pass,
But do
thank
we,
you.
we just need to change the number to add the $85, right?
No,
No, it's
No,
not.
it's all done. He did
Oh, it
it.
was already in
that
the.
presumed passage of
Okay,
motion
okay,
1.
great.
Excellent. Good work. Thank you, ARPA
Yeah.
committee.
All right.
Now we just need the IRA funds to
I
come
know,
in.
I know. I was just thinking that.
Okay, I want to
Yeah.
go on record, it's 9:30, we're gonna be on 9:30.
Well done.
Look at that.
Okay.
Review, you did, thank you. Review of the fire station designer selection RFQ. We got some information from Ryan on this, and
Yeah, I didn't read
it
that.
looks like you have put it on the screen there, Ryan.
So I got comments from Scott, so I'm gonna display his comments.
Hey guys, come on.
I think it's a good way to actually work through this document.
Yep.
But of course, I mean, if you may have comments, and Barney, you sent some,
It's tiny stuff.
so I think.
But I have some other comments, but I didn't send them.
I have comments too, so do you want to scroll through, or how do you wanna?
Don't.
I'm assuming you don't have a problem with the ad.
No, this is the second. This is
My first,
the packet from today.
Right, this is the one that we got today, right?
correct.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I had no time to read this today. I mean, I've been on my running all day.
Do you want me to make my copy?
Yeah.
Do we, prior to diving in, do we have to further the higher level discussion of, are we the committee, or have we already decided?
Well, that's in here. It says the Carlisle School Select Board will appoint a fire station building renovation committee, and we have to decide that.
Well, we
I'm-
can, that.
I'm
we-
just saying,
what-
in our last discussion, and as presented by CMS, we were deliberating or considering whether we would be the committee or we would appoint.
I think we want to be the committee.
Right, so we've already decided that.
I think we
Yes.
do.
I
Right.
thought,
Because
I thought we
then-
decided that.
Okay, I agree, I just was trying to
Okay.
remember, so we don't need to cover.
All right, so background.
So one of the things that's top of mind for me is, given the last procurement process, is that we include information and avenues of questioning in the RFQ that we can ensure we ask the designers.
Yeah.
So, looking at it through that lens, my comments on the project background were, I think it's important to just include a brief overview of our water infrastructure, including the lack of town water
Oh.
and hydrants, the reliance on
Yeah, that's more important
cisterns.
than how good our kids are at school.
Yeah, I think it's important to include our current ISO rating.
Yes.
And also trying to lay the groundworks for cost effectiveness, maybe just in a very brief statement, just somehow cite the challenge that this is in the context of these other building projects that we're trying to balance funding for. So I'm just trying to set the stage of cost effective and some of the challenges we have versus, because I think when we talk to designers, we want to make sure we can ask them about their experience in these areas. And I thought that was more relevant than talking about how we're educated and affluent in the schools.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I agree.
Good.
Which also
Good,
might
good.
lead someone to think,
That
well,
we
they
can
say
afford it.
10 million, but yeah, we can do more.
So you're
Yeah.
gonna get rid of that pink or that gray?
My only other comment on this part of it was just that, the whole thing about the climber lead community and intends the project to maintain a high level of sustainability. I think that should also be included in the project objectives. It wasn't one of the objectives.
Wasn't one of the goals, yeah.
And I think I have a comment in there about that, but I think it's important to, not for the background, but to make sure that that carries over into the project objectives, especially as it relates to trying to secure grants and take advantage of some of the potential funding sources through Climate Leader. And I think when we talk to designers, we want to make sure that we have designers that are thinking about that too.
Yep.
So you want to remove that from the background and include in goals?
No,
or
no,
have it-
No,
Nope.
keep it in the background.
Nope, wanna keep it in
copy
both
and
places.
Copy it and put it in the other place too.
Or just as a goal to
Project objectives.
Where the project objective.
Yeah, just add an objective.
Number
Is that
six.
number 6?
Yeah.
Should that be objectives, plural?
Yes.
Or is it one objective with 6 goals? You know, is the objective meet all the goals and then you list 6 goals?
I had a lot of comments on the objectives. I don't know if other people want to chime in. The first objective, again, to expand the facility capacity to accommodate a long-term on-call volunteer fire department. I see that as a means to an end, that the goal is, I just want to be clear about the goal, and this might be wordsmithing, but, you know, the goal is on attracting and retaining on-call fire volunteers. Expanding capacity is a means, potential means to achieve that, and maybe this is just semantics, but rephrasing this not as, our goal is not to necessarily expand the fire department, our goal is to have a facility
support.
that can accommodate.
How about to support
That's a
long-term
good
on-call?
distinction. I think that, because you don't want to prejudge that we're just
Right.
going to expand, right? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, it's the goal, that's a potential means to the goal.
So the goal is to accommodate a long-term on-call volunteer fire department. And then figure out how to do
Or
that.
Promote.
promote.
Or promote.
Promote.
Support and promote.
Support and promote, okay, fine, whatever. Yeah.
I know we've had a lot of discussion on this, but I come back to, you know, the one objective measure is, do we want to state a goal of just maintaining our existing ISO rating?
But maintain seems like a low bar.
Well, maybe it
But we
is.
don't want it, but we don't want it to go down by the same token. So,
It can.
No, you
No,
want
I mean, we don't want-
down is good.
or well, what I
You
mean.
know what I'm saying is, it's not gonna get worse as a result of.
But the goal is not to get better either.
Right, you know, remember how
Yeah.
the
No, I know.
chief sent us that follow-up, which I think
Right,
is
but why,
absolutely right.
why even, if you're not gonna either improve it or, if there's no risk of deproving it, and you're not going to improve it, why list it as a goal? It's not a goal. It will not go down as a result of building a better fire station. I mean, it will not get worse as a result of building a better fire station. It could get better, but we've said we don't wanna worry about that, so don't list it. If you're gonna list it, you should list it as evaluate whether there are things we can do within the context of the building that would improve it. It's a different
He
discussion.
gets a little off track. I mean, last time Neil said, you
right.
guys are getting a little,
Well, he said that, but, I mean, you've been
Analysis,
the recipient of
paralysis.
some of the back and forth we've had, Travis.
Yeah.
I think there's room there to do a separate study that doesn't really influence the building project. So unless we're gonna prove an
I think it's a
improvement,
different
I
issue.
wouldn't even address it.
I wouldn't address it.
So it wasn't in here to begin with, so
No.
why are we talking, okay.
I recommended adding it. as
Oh,
a
you
goal.
did? Okay, sorry, I'm getting tired.
Yeah,
I'm starting to lose the thread of the conversation.
I would agree that I don't think we should put it in because it does put emphasis on it where we don't really want that to be.
Careful, Travis.
I know.
And the
I see
goal
it.
was, and there is the comment to add that to the project background. Because I do want to ask the designers, you know, I want to have the ability to ask them, have they worked in this type of community with this ISO rating, all that stuff, right? We want
Yeah.
to,
Yeah, you could put that in as a part
it
of
is,
the background.
that was included as part of the background.
Was it? Okay.
To provide for the proper health and safety of the firefighters, I didn't know if we should say something about meeting,
Oh, we're back to that.
if there are any specific requirements or safety standards that we should add in there to be a little more specific.
This is where I thought it was that we need help determining what is, I mean, the chief, I rely on him personally. I mean, I think he's great, he knows what he wants to do. I just wanted like some expert to come in and say, yeah, he's right on target and this is what you need, or push back and say,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
agree.
this is not what you.
Yeah, the
Because-
difficulty
but
we
we-
get into though on that, I agree with you, but I think all of these, if you look at all of these except for the now added environmental one, are about number 5.
Talking about back to the objective.
They're all just about making it attractive to be an on-call firefighter in this town. Right, give better workspaces, make sure it's safer, make sure there's gender equity. They're all
Well, those are-
worthy.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say is that, and we do want to challenge the designer, but when, you know, they're gonna say, well, sure, of course that's better. If you want volunteers, of course you want to make it more welcoming. I mean, it's not like a code thing, like, right, we're not putting things, I do take Mr. Lavery's point that the police station had some specific things, that if you don't do those things, your accreditation is in jeopardy. You can go to a designer and say, what do I have to do to make a jail cell compliant?
Right.
And what don't I need? This is not that, this is all squishy goals.
Right.
That's it.
We're gonna end up at a point where, how do we prevent, and this is what I think is so important for this process,
Right.
is how do we prevent a designer from coming in? And this is why, in theory, we have our OPM,
Right.
but it comes in and says, oh, you wanted all these things, and the designer comes back and gives you a $15 or $20 million project.
Right.
And we're saying, you know what, we've kind of got an idea of a budget.
Right.
So do we want to put that in there?
Yeah.
So I think we put the budget in, I mean, I did some
So that
editing
they
too, but I
make
do
the-
think
help
that
make
needs
the
to be
cuts.
in there.
So that I'm saying the experts, but, you know, somebody is helping us make those trade-offs ahead of time, because I don't
Right,
think we're
but,
gonna
okay,
get
so to
support
go one
from-
layer, no, I agree, but I'm looking at these like 5 things now. So number 1 is way too squishy for anybody to say, well, what does that mean? To expand to, it doesn't say anything. Number 2, I'm harking back to things Brian told us when he initially presented his sort of bar napkin plan, right?
Mhm.
You can be a little more granular on that, right? He made that thing, remember, there's zones, there's like the hot zone and then so I think you could present an expert with that concept. Like, we don't have that today, and we recognize that there has to be a place where people take off their contaminated gear, and then there's a neutral zone, and then there's the workspace. I think we could present that and say, we feel we need those 3 zones. What's the most economical way we can achieve it, given the building we have? And the
Yeah,
building
that's
we
number
built?
2.
So number 2, I think, could be more specific. Number 3 can be specific, right? We gotta have basically equal facilities for genders and non-binary and all that. Again, we can get a recommendation. And then 4, I think, and then 6.
Yeah, pick 5.
Well, 5 and 1 are
5
like.
and 1 are kind of the same thing.
Yeah, they're the same thing, and it's like squishy. I mean, we should put one of the 2. Maybe I would prefer 4 to 1 over 1. But I think in challenging a designer to give us a feedback of that is gonna be hard. You're gonna say, well, I don't know, you know, make it a nice space, right? So anyway, what I'm saying is 2, 3, and 4, we can put we can challenge the designer on specifics of those.
So the chief has a very specific definition of what would be attractive to the workforce, and it's not nice facilities. It's facilities that would allow someone who doesn't live here to spend time here and
Yeah,
serve.
but that's number 4, that's number,
That's number,
oh no, it's not, you're right, where's the workspace?
it's
Well,
under
it's
number
number
1.
5,
and
really.
Number 5.
So workforce attraction isn't nice facilities. It's facilities designed to house people who don't live here.
So he should say that, and we should say that.
We should say that.
We should say that.
Yeah, so to
The more
promote
specific we can be, the
workforce
better.
I agree.
attraction, retention by providing, space for working and sleeping for those that don't live in town, right?
Well, there's the component of those who do live in town, but may want to, I think, if I recall what Brian was saying, if you live in town and you're working from home anyway, and your job involves basically just being on the computer, you might say, fine, if it's a amenable enough space, and
I'll
I'm
come
on
in
call
and
that
park it.
day, I'll just
Yeah.
sit at the fire station and
Yeah.
I'm there already.
Yeah.
So it's not just the out of towners.
And I'm looking at this through the lens of the the responses we get are gonna be specifically addressing these objectives. And we
Right.
wanna make sure we're
Yes.
articulating the right objectives so we can ask them about it.
Totally
Because if
agree.
we don't put them in the objectives, then
Right.
it's probably not, we can't probably ask them about it, right?
Yeah,
So,
Totally agree.
I think it's important just that we get the scope of these objectives right, just so we can open that avenue of conversation with them.
So,
Is there any- Keep going, Kate.
well, I just was
You wanna
wondering, because I
change
can't
any-
really read it from here.
Oh, here, you wanna see?
No, that, I mean, ours I can see, I can't see Scott's.
Well, mine's
changes.
more markup than,
Markup, thank you.
so I mean, it's,
Okay, I see.
you know, I didn't know if we
You
wanted
weren't
to
giving
cite,
us,
I wanted to be
um,
more specific on health and safety, if there were specific things we
Okay,
need
well, how
to.
can we be more specific with health and safety?
Well,
than
we
this
know
is?
that I mean, one of the key things was the, setting it up so they can be decontaminated
Right.
when they come back from a fire in a safe, I don't know, I don't have the right words for that,
Yeah.
but right, setting up
Yep.
that,
Zones.
that zone, yeah.
Do you need that for a credit, like, are those?
No,
required?
but it's,
Oh, I see.
it's, you know, cause the fire materials they're using are toxic.
But it's not like where you need to do this to stay
Yeah, that's
accredited.
right. I don't
there
think so.
is an accreditation for a fire
Okay.
station, is
No.
there?
He's saying
No.
they're moving
Good.
towards that, though.
Yeah.
So I-
Right, so.
So I put to
Brian,
meet current health and safety standards for firefighters.
I would say current and anticipated perhaps, if they're moving towards that. And if he's a subject matter expert, he should know. I'd say they should know.
Yeah, we can ask them, then we have things that we can ask them.
Right,
What do
right.
you anticipate that there
Right,
might
right.
be, or
Yeah,
what's the current,
okay.
okay. Gender equity within, that's sort of,
That's fine.
that's fine, I mean, that, what else were you gonna say?
No, I just didn't know, like, what do we mean by equity? Does it mean an equal amount of space for both?
I don't think it's
No, it just
Title
means-
IX.
Okay, yeah, I just
I
didn't know if
think
there
it's-
was
Yeah.
So do you want to
connotations.
specify that?
I think it's
separate
There's no
space.
accommodation right now for women or.
They have no
right?
separate space at this point.
Right, no separate, no separate.
Again, a
bathroom,
subject matter
separate-
expert should be able to tell us.
Yeah,
The comparable towns who presumably have some female and some non-binary participants
right.
seek in a space, and he should be able to talk about that.
4 I thought was 2 points. There's to carefully consider existing space. I think we should,
Yeah.
we want to, that's one thing, and provide adequate and appropriate truck storage. Like, to me, that's pretty squishy, and
Well, I mean,
here's where we can say, like, do we want to give some direction about how how we want the current space to be considered?
well, we certainly want to utilize, I mean, that almost goes without saying, but we
Well-
want to utilize the current space to the degree possible. I think it is an objective, again, that was raised by Brian, that because we are a town that let me see if I can say it right. Because we frequently have to truck in our water, as opposed to places that have hydrants, it's pretty important to have the truck that holds the water, like,
Inside.
be at a
Ready to
certain
go.
temperature,
Yeah.
right? So that aspect definitely.
Let me ask it this way. Do you want a designer that comes in and says, I'm gonna completely redesign your existing space and build?
No, I agree with the first
So,
part we're saying.
should we try to direct them to say, about our existing space, I mean, do we wanna utilize it as it is? Do we wanna like minimize the work done to, I don't know if we know the answers to those, but I don't want designers just blue sky.
Right, so you'd
Okay,
say,
so maybe the way to put it then is to carefully consider best practice for using existing, reusing and
leverage the current
Leverage,
facility
yes.
to the maximum.
before adding to
potential.
it.
Right, before adding.
Yes.
And we could say
In words of one syllable.
specifically,
Right.
including providing, what did we say? Truck storage, I don't know if I'd say storage, but that basically we
Maximize
want the
use.
active
Yeah.
fire equipment to be
Well, now we're being prescriptive. I think where Scott's going and Kate's going is just
more general, but
utilize the current facility to the maximum degree possible, and then add new space where the current facility
doesn't.
is either inadequate or would be cost ineffective to retrofit,
Mhm.
Yeah.
something like that.
And I'm sorry, what were you saying about the fire trucks, whether there's some.
Well, do we wanna say specifically, we don't feel there's a need to provide storage for the historic fire truck and the, what's the other one that we hold on to? That, right, that end up in the parade, but they don't get used for
Yeah, well,
fires.
the chief would tell you that that's the glue that holds the volunteers together. I'm just
I know you would, but-
reporting.
Yes, yeah.
We're not saying get rid of it, we're just
Just
saying.
saying
the
Put it in the
overhead-
tent.
Yeah, that's what,
Well,
I don't
again,
wanna
do
be
we-
prescriptive,
Do we
but-
say anything about the trucks, or do you just say leverage the existing space to the
I
maximum?
think, yeah, I mean, listen, it's so early in the process.
Well, yeah, but for which trucks? I mean, if,
Well, won't that come out in
if we
convers-
decided
Yeah.
that the antique fire truck is not necessary for the health, safety, and welfare of our town, do we wanna spend money on a building, you know, to garage that truck in?
But you know what, the RFQ describes later on that the designer meets with the select
Right,
board
that's right,
and then some other groups. Maybe that's where we as a select board can say, you know, consider if the current space doesn't allow for storage of all the existing fire equipment, we're okay with the.
Remind me, we're gonna give this
truck.
document, they're gonna come back with proposals. We're
Right.
gonna weed it down, or CMS will help us weed it down to 3 or something like that. And we'll actually interview those people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it'll, I think, and then, even then, we're gonna base presumably our recommendation on our general feel for which one seems to be the most in tune with what we want.
Right.
And then we're gonna start with that person and really
Right.
dive in, so
Right.
I don't think we need to be so prescriptive.
Right.
Yes, okay, so I like to maximize existing
No,
space,
I-
and only
yeah, I
add
would-
cost-effective new space if it's necessary to meet a
Yeah, that's
purpose.
And I thought number 5 was kind of redundant to number 1, where it's, to your point, David, it's kind of like, that's the point, is to retrain and attract.
5 is more specific than 1, right?
Yeah,
Right.
because
Yeah.
you're telling them you want a living space, and I
Right,
think
if,
that is.
if
what-
our goal is to
Move
challenge,
that to the top.
challenge their experience, more specificity will help them say, these are things that, if you give them number 5, then somebody could say, these are things that towns like yours have adopted that have been positively received by on-call departments.
I think
Number
so,
1, they're like.
eliminate, yeah, eliminate 1 and swap it with 5.
Yeah, okay, good.
All right?
I hope this doesn't become a camel.
It is, but that's.
No,
A
it's gonna be
camel.
all right.
Camel?
Yeah, it's an animal
We
built by
feel-
committee.
It's a horse designed by
Well.
committee.
Yes.
And then you add the sustainability one, yeah?
You guys like camels.
You never
Which
did
is
that
really,
before.
really mean to the camel. The camel's really an amazing.
It is, carries water.
Carries its own water.
All right.
Hey, don't mess with the camel.
All right,
All
let's
right,
keep going,
keep
gang.
going, 'cause we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Alright,
Yeah.
let's go.
My only other comment was somewhere, I was saying like somewhere in 1B or 1C, I'm coming back to this idea of, I want to know, whatever the design is, this is what's required, this is what's desirable, this is what's optional, right? So in the suite of the design elements and the recommendations, I want to know, like, is this to meet, like, is this deemed as essential for whatever purpose? Is this something that's a nice to have if it's, you know, or is this something like the antique fire engine might be optional, like it's not,
Yeah.
Right.
or, you know, like I want to know what they see as mission critical versus specific to Carlisle versus good for the community.
Yeah.
And where are you saying that? In
1B,
in 1B?
So
Yeah,
C,
I have a,
D,
like,
number of functional responsibilities, personnel.
But are you proposing to give him those things now?
No, it was just a comment in looking at what would be delivered.
So not under architectural.
Like, I want some
program.
prioritization of programming design elements,
Mhm.
right?
Uh-huh.
Well, I guess I'm a little, again, let me go back. So we give them this overall thing, we interview them, we score them, we pick 'em. That's all pretty much generic. We will get specific on some things. We'll say, what have you done here and there, and you know, isn't it only then once we get going that, well, let me ask
Yeah.
this, are they gonna quote it? Is the quotation envisioned to be here's my price for 1A, here's my price for 1B, and so forth. And that and which of those do we want to have ready for a town meeting presentation whenever it is? And how deep into this process do we get to present at town meeting, right?
Well, I think this is saying we get to a schematic, we get.
Yeah, we get to a schematic, so 1C. So 1A, B, and C has to get, whether it's fall, spring, whatever, 1A, B, and C are the things that have to get done to be able to present to the town meeting.
Yes.
Here's a schematic and here's a reasonable fidelity cost of the project.
Phase 1C.
Right, and then D and all this other stuff are
And then we
two.
go out to bid and it's
Right.
50% more.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and then I think it was Neil that raised it or whatever. Recommended is that you stick with that same designer for phase 2, but you're not actually
Right, and it says that
committing
there's
yourself.
language in that, it says
Right.
that.
Okay.
Is that the intent?
Well, that
Brian,
doesn't
do you
answer,
think?
no, this answers what
Scott's raising.
Scott's raising.
Well, it does in a way, because I think we don't need to, I don't know, unless we don't like the things listed in like 1B, we don't have to say NT, that'll come out later, right? You don't have to say that.
Well, okay.
I don't know, it just
Well,
seems like it's got already, these are generic things, right?
I was gonna say, is this a generic list, do you think? This wasn't sort of made specific to
It's
Carlisle,
generic,
I'm
yeah,
assuming,
it's
cause
generic.
like under E where it says flexibility and expandability, when I saw expandability, I thought, now what does that mean? Is that because we're saying we want it to be built in such a way that down the road, if we needed to expand, it allows for that expansion? Or is this, because I don't recall that we've said that, but, or is this just boilerplate language?
I agree, I don't think we have said that.
Yeah.
It's all boilerplate.
So,
So we could take that out.
I mean, I think
Is this
flexibility
Is it-
in.
Is this from
in terms of
CMS?
All boilerplate.
Because
being able to.
it gives them too many things to then
Right.
go off on tangents, so I think we
Right.
want,
Yeah,
that's good.
Okay, all right, so let's go back.
However,
So-
flexibility,
yeah,
there's
particularly if it's
certain,
flexibility in, what I was thinking is, some of the non-garage space, the
Yes.
workspace could be designed in such a way that, you could use it as a meeting space if you need it, or you
Right.
could use it, I don't know what that means, but maybe you have sliding doors, or I don't know,
Right,
right?
that gives
That
you some
allows you to
flexibility, yes.
use it for different things.
so,
I've forgotten, you mentioned if there's prefabrication, if you wanted them to look into that as a, as a
Yeah.
possibility, was that, I've forgotten if that was in there.
I have a thought on that, which is, I don't know whether I took this from something else but something about that the town wants to work with a designer who likes working with many different types of building materials and is and to control costs, or something like that.
and you had that under which section?
We could put that in the
Under,
objective.
I had-
well, it
well,
was
actually, I did
space-
have-
It was space requirements, I don't know.
I had it under objectives. I had preference for cost-effective facility solutions,
All
e.g.
right.
prefab.
Maybe we
Okay,
put
so
that
let's
right
put
up there
that
in
on
the
Relative
I
to
think that's a
design
good idea.
status.
You know what?
Yes.
There's something the board just generated that we've said is
There you go.
important,
Yes.
it wasn't on there, and I think
Yes.
that's important.
Right.
Yeah,
Glad
absolutely.
that we put it right up front.
Up top at the objectives.
So that they know, that whoever this designer is, that we're not just saying, oh, whatever you think and everything.
That's why you
Right.
eliminate all the rich town stuff up front.
I also
Well, we
said
did.
exterior
We're a
should
very
be.
thrifty town.
Yeah, it should be-
Exterior should be plain and functional, not decorative. But that's-
Did you?
I did,
Yeah.
Well,
but I don't know
That's
that
that's
that maybe
okay.
is a follow-up, I don't know.
That's,
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of like don't house the antique fire truck in there. I mean, that'll come out in the
Yeah,
discussion.
we don't have
But
to
I
do that.
think I think we're getting good work product now on program objectives. And I do understand that the very first step is to meet with everybody, so that's the work plan. And then the second step is take a look at the site and tell us what the limitations are. So I think that stuff's okay.
David, before you keep going though, on the objectives, are we gonna add that in?
Yeah, we
Yes.
should do, yes.
That was, and do we,
What was your
Uh,
language, Barney? I thought that was great.
Well, I don't know if, I said, the town wants to work with a designer who likes working with many different types of building materials and to control costs.
But I think we gravitated to the control cost aspect of that.
Yeah.
I have
And
one.
what do
I
you
have
have?
preference for cost-effective facility solutions relative to design aesthetics.
Oh, yeah,
That's good.
okay.
Okay, so you do
Sure,
that
I
one,
don't,
do
yeah,
that.
I'm
Yes,
fine.
that's, I like that better than plain exterior.
Right.
Well, that was a whole, that was a separate item.
I understand, but
But
this
then we
has,
can also, it opens the avenue to ask me about that.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
No, but I think that puts right up front what our priorities are.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Yeah.
We're not looking for the Taj Mahal.
yeah.
All right.
He's,
Are you
So
ready?
while he's typing,
Yes.
I think,
Now, also, I'm sorry, go
well,
ahead.
you go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't think we've said in here any sort of, says project cost estimate. Well, don't we wanna say something about
not to
our
exceed.
goal is not to exceed 10 million?
Yeah.
We've
That's-
avoided
okay.
saying that, but, and I
That should be
know
up in the
Neil
objectives.
said right up front, he said he doesn't think we can do it for that, but I think we should give him that direction.
Well, really, so one should be budget cap of $10 million.
Number one, yes, is,
That may weed out some entrance right off.
Yeah,
Some people may say,
that's kind of what we
You
see in
mean
this
have all
committee, they
interest.
take a life of their own.
Right.
The
yeah,
designers or.
so should we say that first?
Yep, I think we should.
yeah.
Okay, so do it.
Relative to
So-
design aesthetics.
So Ryan, the new number one is aesthetics.
A-S-T-H-E.
Very
See,
good.
and the very first line, which is not one of the bulleted things, says, includes an addition / annex to and integrated renovation. I mean, it's saying right up front that we're
What is
expecting an
pre-
addition, right?
Well, how else
The
would you
fire
do it?
department project includes,
Oh, yeah.
right,
But what,
It
well,
just-
we've said, number 4, maximizing, and only add, new space, so number 4, maybe number 4 covers that.
Well, maybe instead of, though, to your point, Barney, you should say the Carlisle Fire Department project, of the,
Should
fire
meet the
department station,
following
just,
stated goals?
yeah, should meet the following stated goals, just,
Yeah.
and forget the including.
Yeah.
So strike
Right,
out
yeah, right,
includes,
you're right.
an addition, annex
right,
to an
Right, so
integrated
it would say
renovation,
The Carlisle Fire Department project,
period, yeah,
should meet the following goals.
yeah.
right, maybe they think at the, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first one is,
Keep it. to
Or is
10.
it the last one? and
Well,
say,
maybe we
"Hey,
make
do
it the
all this
last
and then
one."
keep it under 10.
Yeah,
okay, well, right,
Or not.
I mean, partly
keep
I'm
it,
thinking
yeah.
about I mean, the push for all of this is number 1, right?
Well, then it should just be, rather than, maybe it should just be a paragraph, like right there.
Paragraph?
Instead of a
The
numbered
select-
thing.
Right, the select board.
No, it should be an objective.
Well,
Well, the select board, well, yeah, okay.
It should be right up front.
All right, right
Then
up
we
front.
can clearly state
All right,
to the
so put
public
it up
and
number
everyone
one
else, these
Okay,
are
let's
our
go.
bullet
Number
points.
7,
This is what we.
okay.
No, number one, I think.
Or number 1.
Travis
You
is
want-
saying number one.
No, I was saying you could put it at the last
Yeah.
because it's kind of a
All right.
catch-all. You
Right.
tell them,
Okay.
dream big, and then by the way.
And do all this for, do all this for $10 million.
yeah,
Or you could
Okay,
get them
so
up
it's
front.
number
it's
Well,
number
there's
7.
7, lucky 7.
Yeah.
Engine 7.
Engine number 9.
Okay, so,
Zero
well,
responses.
the goal is to keep the project,
We get no proposals.
well,
No,
we'll get,
These
We'll
people
get
are
some.
cray
No, I-
cray. We're not.
they might come
Finalize
and
a
tell us
project
you're
that
crazy.
does not exceed 10 million. Yeah.
All right, okay. Okay.
Yep.
It's
Put
it's
it
an
out there.
objective, you know,
Yeah.
we may
It's
not
objective,
make it,
right,
but, you
right.
know,
Just
Well, we
stretch.
might.
you wanna put
We
12
might.
million
We
in
might
there?
just make
You don't
trade-offs.
say it, you won't make it.
Right,
So
exactly.
I
This
wanna
is-
go, it's late and we really should
Yep.
wrap it soon, so
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think,
Excuse me, but you ran over the part
yeah, I
also
wanna
about
go,
us,
right, I wanna go
doing
to,
a selection committee.
well, before we get, I mean, just on this section. So objectives, okay, as I was saying, yeah, work plan, of course, they're gonna meet, everybody's gonna tell you that. They're gonna meet with all the key, stakeholders, blah, blah, blah.
and then they're gonna look at the environment and the site and say,
Yes.
this is what you got. But there's a disconnect between phase 1A and then suddenly we jump into programming in 1B. I'm kind of missing a step. Like, they do the background, and then it seems like we convene and we talk about, because it is true that in 1B, pretty much everything there except for N is motherhood statements.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean anything, right?
Mhm.
It's really the conversation we have after they've gathered the data and said, here's the site you got, and here's what your stakeholders are telling you, and here's what you said your objectives. How do we meld that into giving them direction on 1B? It sounds like 1B, they come out, this is the problem, right? Oh, here's my plans. Look, it looks great. It's a Taj Mahal. Don't you love it, right? We don't want that. We want, tell us what you found
Well,
in your research, and let's talk about how that fits our objectives and how we get there. You don't need all the all those things are in there, obviously, right? So,
Scott, what do you think?
Well, this is where I was having some kind of prioritization of here's all the elements, and I want to know how they map to each objective and what's a must-have versus.
May I suggest? So I think A accomplishes that, but I think if you want to make it more clear,
well, then
You
you
say-
only need A. You don't need all that other stuff. Then.
you say you just don't proceed until
Yeah.
A is complete. You just mark it. But really, this is
You mean A here?
yeah.
Just 1B.
A.
1BA?
Do a page break and just say
Objective.
Limitations and criteria.
not
And
to
then-
proceed until.
Well, what
Programming
about
is
space
complete.
requirements though, because that's part of the,
But
that's
I
part
guess
of the
Falls under the
objectives.
objective.
So what this is, it's, so if you don't include this, then when they give you a cost and you come back and you say, I want you to do site requirements and needs, they're gonna say, okay, it's an additional cost. So
Yeah.
you're saying this is the scope.
But don't. Okay, so let me try again. We state clearly up front what our objectives are.
Yes.
Then we say the next thing you're gonna do is go talk to stakeholders. And the thing after that is you're gonna look at the site. And then the thing after that should be
Based
come
on,
back and tell us how you can meet the objectives
based
based on what you've heard.
yeah.
And then we have a discussion, and then I guess we want these things to be part of your what?
Okay. I see what
Initial,
you're saying.
I don't really know what proposed program is. Is that going, because it won't be schematic yet. It'll just be, what is 1B? What is the work product out of 1B? Is it a plan?
Program.
What is a program?
Program decides what they're gonna design.
But what does that mean? Tell me in like English.
This room is used for meetings.
Right. So are they gonna say,
parties.
you need
You need-
a 400
Program.
square foot room
Yes.
with 6 windows?
Yes.
They're gonna be that
Well,
specific.
no, it won't be with the 6 windows, but they'll say, for these functions, you
Yeah.
need this amount of space. For those
Okay,
trucks, you
great.
need that amount of space, and
Right,
and
okay.
that's what the program
So
is.
in advance of a schematic design, these A through, maybe B through N, they're gonna give us a document? What are we gonna get out of that? I don't really understand it, because it seems to me like you should come up with a schematic that says this is, or several schematics that say these are the kind of things that would meet those objectives.
So
And then we drill down into the.
So programming is, what do you want to accomplish in the building? And then they're going to come back to you, you're going to agree on programming, and then they're going to come back to you with a schematic design that meets the program.
Okay.
We had this for the DPW. I don't know what those criteria were the same ones. I think so.
We didn't get this granular.
But
They
that's
just-
this is what we eventually did.
They just did
We
programming.
just went through this process of the MFC for
Okay.
the DPW.
For
It's-
what building?
For the DPW building, to look at it as though.
Oh, okay.
As though if we are to do a new building there.
This is MFC did it.
The MFC, what would it take? And you have to do a site survey, you have to look, okay, well, what is space do you have
Yeah,
available, where can you fit
okay.
things? So that's what Brian is
Okay,
saying, some of
all right.
this. But to the extent that you can limit this, you don't wanna make it too narrow so that
Right.
then it's all add-ons, but at the
Right,
same time,
right.
you wanna be specific,
Yeah.
so you know what you're getting.
Right, so C, E. I don't even know what some of the stuff is. H. What are those things?
Those are what you said you wanted before this. It's what the architects found out when they did all their interviews and all this stuff. They discovered that these are the space requirements, that this space should not be too far away from that space because
Okay.
you have to go
Okay.
through a contaminated
I
space to
see.
get
So
to
that's C. Okay, so that makes sense. So B, A, we already decided that's the first thing to do. B and C makes sense. So it makes sense. D is more background, right? Isn't that's
Well,
for them
again,
to
that's
tell
that's
us.
some of the that's
Us
some
to
of the
tell them.
stuff that they discovered. They find out how many volunteers you have, and you know what
Okay.
their
All right.
their
Okay.
responsibilities
All right.
are.
Okay.
So they're reporting on all the
Okay.
things. That's so. I think all those things are really.
Okay. All right then.
All right, we're wearing them down.
All right.
We're wearing them
Well,
down.
No, I mean it's good.
This is the key phase, right? This
Well,
is the key step.
the
of the
thing is, it's
project.
important for us to understand
Right,
what
yes,
these are too.
it is.
so
Make
that-
sure it's
It is.
Yeah.
right sized.
Okay,
Exactly.
so to Ryan's point, they come back with, so maybe the one editorial thing is just that there should be, maybe phase 1B should be limited to item A, and then phase 1C, new phase 1C, would be actually architectural programming. There's gotta be a step between the site plan in phase 1A and us getting back and saying in a very high level, what do you think? Where are you going with this?
I don't.
Rather than them trundle off and get all this granularity and we're like, wow, we don't want that because that looks really expensive. Now maybe that's just in the process of dialogue. Maybe.
Yeah, but any project, building project, needs a programming phase where they get all this information.
I think setting the cap or that
Yeah.
is
Okay.
helpful because
Alright.
then
Yeah.
they're gonna work to that, and if we're really beyond it, they should come to us sooner rather than
Right.
later and
Okay.
say,
Alright.
you know, we're not gonna hit this.
Yeah.
And
So-
what do you guys wanna do?
In the thing here where it says the designer must receive the committee's written approval, the updated site and environmental analysis, and the updated architectural programming prior to progressing the subsequent work activities, maybe we should say that during the architectural programming, if it becomes evident that we can't do this project within the stated budget, that they need to come to us and give us an interim report or something like that, so that we can,
Do we
you
have
know.
Well,
an
they're
out?
gonna do that anyway, aren't they?
We have an
Yeah.
out, right?
So this comes down to trust a little bit. So the architect you're hiring, this is what they need to do to program. What you're talking about is whether or not you trust what they say. So you can add that clause, but this is what the reason you don't understand is because none of us are architects. So the architects do the programming, and they're going to bring that to you. I guarantee you some of the things they're going to say you're not going to want, and it's going to be really whether or not you can
Okay.
work
we,
with them to decide whether or not
right,
it's.
so they present that, we weed some things out maybe before they progress to schematic.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, that
Right.
goes without saying.
I mean,
They
in
might
terms
say-
of,
Building won't work without that.
Okay.
you
in
Yeah.
terms, if site survey costs one, a unit of one, what does programmatic planning cost and what does schematic cost? Give me like relative cost of effort in your experience.
Very similar to the OPM fee. So the OPM fee was 450,000, and the first to get us to town meeting was 80,000.
To get us to town meeting.
That part's relatively cheap.
Which
The
is take
initial, this is what we're doing now.
all of this
Yeah.
for 80,000.
I don't know.
No, that's the OPM.
No, that's the OPM
That's
cost.
not-
Yeah.
We're gonna have a
Designer.
separate.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking,
When we
is
hire
the
this
designer.
designer,
I think it'll be similar, is what I'm saying.
So it'll be 400,000-ish to get us how far?
So
Through schematic?
no, it's
80,000,
another 80 to
another
get us to
80,000.
town meeting to approve additional funding. So 160 between the OPM
Oh,
and the
okay.
designer.
Okay, so not really that much in a $10 million project. And that would get us a schematic.
No, it
What would
gives
it
us
get
the
us?
programming.
You would get us the program.
Get us.
No, it gives you a
It does
schematic.
give you a
It gives
schematic,
schematic.
but-
It
yeah,
gives you
that's
elevated
phase
schematics
one
to
C.
show what it's gonna look
Okay.
like.
Yeah.
So 80,000, we can get all the way, what you're telling me is you can get all the way through
No,
phase one.
for
That seems awful.
160. You got the OPM and you've got the.
Right, we already have the
Okay.
OPM, so this is additional. The guys we're interviewing,
We're hiring the guys to hire these guys. It's theory.
we hired the guys to hire these guys.
Well, but we're gonna interview, well, some committee of people is gonna interview the,
What more?
Reader.
We've already committed essentially 320,000, I mean, 520,000, whatever, 480,000, I'm sorry. It's like, we already committed $500,000 to CMS to guide us, to town
Yes.
meeting and that. We're gonna go through all this, we're gonna spend another 80K, is that what I'm hearing, let's say it's
Well, no,
100K.
we're not giving CMS that much to get to town meeting. We don't have that.
Okay, I don't know, I don't understand where.
well, it's,
We're not,
Do you wanna walk us through it? Do you know it off the top of your head or not?
isn't that their fee for the project?
well, you showed us the
No.
layout. It's
They're paying for the
after-
project?
Yes.
Really?
The town meeting, the ARPA's covering,
It gets us to town meeting.
because it's town meeting.
The 140 or whatever.
That's for both of them.
For both of them, oh.
Ish.
Because
We're gonna be able to obligate this
Yes.
in time?
Well, it depends on if we.
We don't.
That's not where we go tonight.
We can.
We're not meeting
We
till
gotta get-
January.
no,
yet.
we
That's why
gotta
we have to
finish
finish
this
this up
tonight.
tonight.
Alright, yeah, we're gonna.
It has to
So
go out
wait,
the
the
door.
schedule is, we're gonna finish this tonight, they're gonna then, the OPM's gonna take this, is gonna go get the bids, go out, or, you know,
Right, send
how
it
many
out.
groups, they're going to help, we're gonna show us all of them, we're gonna likely select 3, maybe
But
we
that's
will,
in
maybe we'll
January.
select
Yes,
one
yes.
in
If you-
January.
Did you look at the schedule at the end?
January
But-
17th.
Yeah.
I know, I understand
So the-
that, I
the
don't
ARPA's
understand how you get the ARPA money.
The ARPA's for the OPMs.
Okay, fair enough, okay, got it.
I don't know.
I'm gonna
Okay.
be specific again and just look at one thing under that list of architectural programming. I think K, where it says project development scheduling, I think we gotta say to meet a May 18th town meeting deadline, or whatever you wanna call it, right? I think we gotta put that in there.
Yeah, some of that I thought it was development of the whole thing, meaning how long it would take. If you use this, if you built this, whatever they come up with, this is how long it's gonna take you. It's gonna take.
Well, that's fine, I'm just saying somewhere in here.
Alright,
we
so I'm
need
gonna
to
try and
correct-
take us up
Okay,
to the, you
Higher
call the
level.
select board level. So the.
Theoretical select board.
Out of the
theory.
weeds.
So town meeting,
Yeah.
what you said you wanted to do was to bring a reasonable estimate of cost to the voters so that you could get design money.
right.
Yes.
Right.
So then he could actually do the construction documents and design and bring the total final cost at a different town meeting.
Right.
Right.
So all you're trying to accomplish here is, it's a lot, but the programming needs of the building, the basic schematic design, and a relative
Okay,
cost assessment.
Yeah.
That's all you're getting done for town meeting.
Right.
Right,
Which is why Neil thinks they can get it done, because for an architect and an OPM and a building the size, it's not that complicated. So
okay, all right.
it's really, the most difficult part of this is for you all to agree to the programming. So
Yeah.
this document is supposed to get you a second expert that you can use to get to agreement on
Okay.
programming, so they can tell you, okay, now we have to
Yeah.
design this, and it's gonna
Okay,
cost.
let's do it.
okay, all right. Well, then, that calendar down there still says June 2025,
Right, so you have to correct
so it
that.
has to be changed to May.
Yep.
Okay,
And then there's still the paragraph in there that says that we are appointing a design selection committee, which we are not.
Well, you are the design selection.
right,
Okay,
So,
so,
so the select board shall act as the
You
design.
have to have a DSC, and you're picking yourself.
Right, so
Okay, so
okay.
I noticed there's 6 copies of the proposal,
Oh,
one
that's-
electronic, I don't think you need
We don't
copies.
care.
But you
No,
don't need-
that's
why do you have to
Ryan.
have some paper copies?
That's what I said, so I said take that out of there.
Well,
Or is there
I-
some
there might
reason?
be
You want-
something.
Because you want them to handle the costs, so when they hand them out, you don't have to print them.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
figured we'd just look online, because
Yeah, I'd rather
we're all
say-
doing this, but, okay.
Anyway, let's
I
not.
would love that, if everyone would just agree to.
Well, the boiler in here has fax too, please submit your fax, you can take that out. I thought that
Right,
was-
right.
Stone tablets. Please bring 6 stone tablets.
Name, address,
on which you
tel,
have
and fax numbers.
etched
And
your,
that's been around for a while.
Okay.
All right.
Whatever.
I'll give you my AOL address for that.
All right. I think we've done it here.
Yep.
Anywhere, everyone in
So
agreement?
you are gonna correct the June,
So the most important part of this document,
We didn't talk about.
didn't talk about, which is the design selection criteria.
but isn't it
Oh,
like before?
Isn't it the rating that we talked about?
Yeah, it's,
Or where are the design
is it?
Highly
selection
advantageous.
criteria?
yeah.
Yeah, here.
Excellent.
Wouldn't we be the same kind of thing
You
that
said
we
in
did
the
for the
email,
OPM?
focus on objectives.
Right.
Yeah, right. You
Yeah,
said, you know,
design selection
Uh,
criteria.
Yeah, I think this is stuff you did before, right?
Isn't it
Do
just
way
like
we
the
did it before,
OPM?
it's fine.
Or you're saying that the text of what highly advantageous would mean, that we should be focusing on what highly advantageous
Did you do this or did
means?
CMS did this.
All right, so that's
Uh-huh.
fine.
Did you review it?
I did.
And
All right, then we're done.
you're
Did you have
comfortable
any
with
comments on it? No. I mean, you're happy with it?
I am.
Good.
It's just when you sit down and we're handcuffing you a little bit, you have to remember that you agreed to.
I know, but it's all relative. It's all relative, right?
You think
To each other.
you're gonna be able to rein us in?
Right, right.
Forget it.
I was trying to give you the option.
It's who we want.
So you forget, but at that meeting you're like, well, we should have had a chance to review this. This is your chance. I just want you to remember you
Okay.
wanted.
All
Is there
right.
a reason, not to get too granular, is there a reason number 4 only has A, B, and C
Yeah, I wondered that too.
as opposed to A, B, C?
It doesn't have a
and D?
not
that's a-
advantageous category.
Or an unacceptable, yeah, it has, oh yeah, that's right.
It has an unacceptable,
It-
it just doesn't have a not advantage.
Because I think that's one of the key ones.
Understanding of the
Project
project.
goals.
Yeah, you probably need to put a C,
Criteria, understanding.
not advantageous.
Yeah. And the other thing, just for our benefit from last time, the quality of references, add email in there to what they're giving us.
Oh, yeah, good call,
Right.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, because
We had a hard time reaching.
References without emails will be ignored. That's what you should say. No, seriously.
Yeah.
You should
Oh,
say
that's
that.
a good one. Yeah. Question is this, are we gonna have to do this again? Depends how many we pick.
Do what again?
Oh, go through the ranking, you mean?
No, the email, reaching out to
Yes.
each.
Oh,
is-
references.
is- or-
Potentially.
But if it's email, it's a lot
It
easier.
is a
Yeah.
lot. All right, it gets our buy-in.
CMS can do it.
Good.
Oh,
I like that.
oh,
Oh, that'd be
yes,
good.
even better.
We'd ask them too to provide.
Why can't they
their
just pick the
ranking.
frickin'?
Their-
Because we want to pick them.
That's why we're hiring.
Okay, all right.
And they'll help us pick the best one.
All
out of
right,
the
well,
bunch.
So, Ryan, you're gonna finalize all the you have the objectives now. And you have to tweak a few things here and push it back out to them, or what?
Just need you to agree that this works.
So that what I'm hearing, we've already done the objectives, we agree on the programming. You're going to clarify that the select board will act as the design selection committee. We gotta change the calendar to make, and how far in advance, cause it says schematic be completed by June and for a June town meeting. Like, how far in advance of the schematic being done do we need it to present to town meeting? Like, should we say May 1 is the deadline?
I don't think we have a lot of control, so when we know, we'll know. So one of the questions you can ask the designer is, can you have this done by April?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And if they say, yes, of course we can, then you just decide whether or not.
You believe them.
You believe me.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Anything else, Brian? You've kept us on track.
Yeah.
Steve makes this process, not me, just so you know.
Yes,
No, I know.
yeah.
But you don't need us to approve the document, right?
No.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Great.
We've
You have our feedback.
given our.
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, let's move on. Wow, we
There's
are.
still more to do?
Well, there's a town administrator report if you want to hear it. Or
No, we read it. We read it.
I did, I have
It's
to
in the
say.
packet
It
and
was
we
in the
read it.
packet.
That
It
might
was
be
one
a
of the-
new. There's warrants and minutes. We could do that next time because
Correct.
I haven't had a chance to fully go. Liaison reports I don't see anymore, and now we could come up with community input. Is there anybody from the community? Oh, hold on.
I just have one
You could
liaison report.
Oh, yeah.
one, I was looking at the school committee agenda. They're having their public budget hearing tomorrow.
Oh,
So I'm just going to attend that.
we'd
Great.
really like to know what's driving that budget.
Well, I know what's driving the budget. I just don't know what the process is, because the last meeting was, I don't know what happened between the last budget presentation and this budget presentation. There hasn't been any meetings, but they're having a public hearing, so I don't know. I'm just curious what the process is. It's
Please
only-
attend.
And it's only allocated 15 minutes on the agenda.
But there, and is the, included in the packet, is there a proposed budget?
Yes.
Is it the same as the
It's-
last one?
No, it's similar to what Ryan had in his, but it's lower than the previous one I saw.
5%
Yeah.
or whatever?
So I don't know what,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what conversations have happened, so I'm gonna attend that, and I FinCom's aware of it as well.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the process is. I don't know if
I'm not sure they know.
yeah, I think they're, yeah.
Brian, I will give you time, because I would just, if there's something you want to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't mean to.
I'm gonna have to record the
Oh, is this the
podcast
podcast?
with Julie separately, but
dulcet
that's
tones.
fine, it's late. But there are 3 things that I do need to tell the board. So,
Oh, right, and we need a motion about Gretchen too.
first of all, the tax rate was reported incorrectly to, this is important for public information. So at the tax classification hearing, the tax rate was listed as 13.22. That did not include the free cash in the DOR submission that was voted at town meeting. So we don't feel like, although it met your goals, that we could just not do that since the town voted on it. So the actual tax rate is 13.18, which lowers everyone's taxes. So we made a mistake that helped everybody.
Let's make more mistakes.
Need to make more
We
mistakes.
got a lot of mistakes we need to make.
Included in your packet is the Q4. So this is the end of year really for FY24.
So it's June, is that right?
End of
I
June.
mean, the quarter, so it's May, April, June
May, April, June of
of
24.
this year, okay.
Reason why it's important is because it's the end of year, which is what informed a lot of the intro that I had about the budget. Some things to note in our financial monitoring, just pay attention to the financial monitoring section. A lot of the audit recommendations have been implemented, and the free cash numbers matter, which was part of the discussions earlier. I did approve Old Home Day town land usage. You did delegate this to me. I just want to make sure you know that. All the signs and stuff you're used to that. So just 2 more things. I'm asking the board to vote to support naming Gretchen Gallimore as the voting representative at the Maya annual meeting.
Yep.
I'm not gonna be able to make it, so she's gonna serve as my proxy.
Do you have a motion on that?
Yeah, I move to name Gretchen Gallimore as the voting representative at the MIIA annual meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed.
The library trustees met last night. I'm meeting with Martha this week to talk about library funding, but I included a pretty significant chunk of information in there about how costs have increased shockingly for the library renovation project. So they really need to get their arms wrapped around funding. I mean, it's their call, so I'm just helping support and sharing information with you, but this obviously has implications on CPC money and other financial aspects. And looking through, just staff recognition is important to me. So Jim Hall, 30 years.
Yeah.
That's quite a lot of time
Yeah.
making sure that everybody's safe on our roads. So Jim's great, and I just wanted to point that out. John Mativier is officially a building commissioner again, so that's really good news. And the city of Salem recognized the Carlisle Fire Department for assisting with a 172-acre fire on October 26th. You remember when we were going through the droughts, there was fires everywhere. And Carlisle was specifically called out for their ability to respond as one of the very few call fire departments that were included in a giant mass of firefighters. So we can again be proud of them. That's it.
Great.
So I have one question, Ryan, on this TBA report on the fire station, where we now seem to be up to 3.55
The
million?
police station?
Police station, I'm sorry.
That's what was voted at town meeting.
That was voted, the 3.55?
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you.
On the upcoming dates, January 14th, looks like our next meeting. I would like to add an executive session ahead of that, if that's possible. The reason being is we have to decide if we want to renew the TA's contract. and we need to kind of make that decision if we're not going to before February 1st. And I just think it would be important to have a executive session, and we can then, in that session, likely discuss how we want to proceed as a board and who might want to, appoint to lead that charge. So think about that.
So 6:30?
6:30.
Okay.
On the
I will not be
14th.
attending that meeting. I'm gonna be in France. 6-hour time.
Can't do it remotely?
6 hours
12:30.
time.
You could be at the executive session.
I can be at the executive session and maybe still be awake, depending upon whether I have, we'll see what kind of Wi-Fi I have.
It's the 14th, okay.
Well, I'll talk to you, and
Okay.
I'd like to connect.
Yeah, I
figure
want
out what
fire
your
'em,
thoughts.
so, you know.
That's a joke, I hope.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
And I would
absolutely.
include the January 8th and 9th as the departmental.
Yeah.
FinCom
Oh, yeah,
mentioned
to
those
put
were the
those on.
Yes.
departmental.
And
I have
are they
that
doing
one.
it
Marathon session.
similarly
They
to the
usually
way
start
they've
at
done in
like
the
3 in the
past?
afternoon.
Where they'll have a schedule out though of who's coming when?
We have the schedule already.
And people we're welcome to drop in if we want to
Yeah,
listen
they're
to
public
something.
hearings and nobody
Yeah.
ever
You
attends.
want to send it, Ryan?
Except for me usually.
That would be
Okay.
great. I have it too. I guess I could send it.
Yeah, if somebody would send that, that would be nice. But
Yeah.
usually they start at 3 and go till 7
Keep it down.
and have pizza somewhere along the line.
Right.
Oh, you're going for the pizza?
I always go for the pizza.
Oh.
Hey, who cares about the budget?
All right,
Oh,
all
yeah.
right. We gotta keep going here.
All right.
So the 14th, 6:30.
Yep, got it. No.
Okay, last would be public input unless there's anything by the select board, anything else, or Ryan. Okay, is there any public input? We're at the end of the evening.
Not from me.
What?
We got it. We got your input.
I thought that if I didn't say anything, that you guys would like, is he really there? Yeah, I sounded out.
Well,
We got your written input,
Everybody's
John.
gonna chime in saying the same now, but, all
Yeah.
right. Thanks,
Thanks,
John.
John.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, we're done.